Chapter 719. Lung Shiqi definitely did not want to become the next consciousness of the system. Now he had two options. One was to understand the laws of heaven and earth as soon as possible, so that he could strip away the system. In the future, he would also have to use the system as little as possible. The source of the system's energy was actually the system currency. As long as Lung Shiqi did not use resources to exchange for system currency, the system's energy would not increase and it would buy him more time. However, the path of cultivation was also a heaven-defying act. The road was rugged and he could not use the system forever. He could only use it as a last resort. Unknowingly, Lung Shiqi felt a lot of pressure in his heart. That pressure forced him not to slack off at all. He had to improve his strength at all times. After making up his mind, Lung Shiqi was still curious about the changes in the system after he had 100% authority. After all, there were some parts of the system that did not require system currency. Perhaps he could use them. He carefully looked at each of the subsidiary systems. First of all, the backpack system no longer had any grid or limit. It could be said that this was a backpack with unlimited space. The system map did not change much because he had already opened all the maps. Now it was more detailed, and even the names of the places were written. All the functions of the pet system had been opened. As long as Lung Shiqi was willing to spend the system currency, he could cultivate the Goo King or the four-legged metal-swallowing beast to rank 6 or even rank 7 in a short time. However, when it came to the system currency, Lung Shiqi still decided to think about it again. The changes in the territory system were the least. Even if he had all the system authority, he was still the host. He still had to follow the requirements of the territory system and slowly upgrade the underworld. However, there were also some additional territory functions. For example, he could materialize the territory and place it in a certain place. This way, as long as the members of the underworld were nearby, they could directly teleport in. It was very convenient. There was also the setting of territory authority and so on. Lung Shiqi still had to slowly explore it. As for the shop system, it was the one that had changed the most. Now the shop no longer had any products on display, nor did it have the ability to refresh. This was because Lung Shiqi could directly use system currency to exchange for any item in any world. As long as you had enough system currency, he could even become a god. Rather than calling it a lottery system, it would be more appropriate to call it the All Heavens Exchange System. While Lung Shiqi was surprised, he also felt that this system was too scary. At the mention of the Lucky Draw system, he opened the Lucky Draw interface. All the Lucky Draw options had been unlocked. There were Top Lottery, Super Lottery and Divine Lottery. The system coins needed to be spent were 100,000, 1 million, and 10 million respectively. Lung Shiqi sucked in a breath of cold air when he saw this. The first time he had drawn an infinite skill point after obtaining the system, he had drawn an infinite skill point worth tens of millions of system coins. Without unlimited skill points, Lung Shiqi would never have achieved what he did today. Even if he did reach this point sooner or later, it would take a long time. Now that he thought about it, he was really lucky back then. He already had these subsidiary systems. Now that he had all the system permissions, there were different changes. Next, he would have to look at the others. For example, he didn't need to upgrade the system anymore. He could activate all kinds of subsidiary systems at will. Thinking of the equipment system, profession system, talent system, and so on that he had reluctantly abandoned, he could activate them at any time. However, Lung Shiqi didn't choose to activate any of the subsidiary systems after hesitating for a while. What was the purpose of activating the subsidiary systems? It was nothing more than to improve his strength. However, Lung Shiqi now had many ways to improve his strength. For example, he had new spiritual skills for many of the high-level techniques he had. Moreover, he didn't plan to use unlimited skill points for these high-level spiritual skills. He wanted to rely on his own ability to cultivate them. Although the consciousness of the system had been erased by him, the words it said before it died were still imprinted in Lung Shiqi's mind. That was to not rely too much on the system. He had killed the consciousness of the system this time. Next time, he might have to face the system directly. If he used the spiritual skills cultivated by the system to fight against the system, he definitely wouldn't be able to win. Cultivating these spiritual skills required time, and fusing them took even more time. In addition, he had just broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm, so he needed to consolidate his cultivation. In this way, he would be slowly improving his strength for a long time, so he didn't need to activate the subsidiary systems. Instead of directly obtaining power from the system, it was better to get something more specific. For example, the ability to teleport instantly like the Fate skill was actually more practical than the profession system. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi muttered, "This system, it seems like it's time to hide it." Therefore, he didn't care about the outside world's discussion, and continued to cultivate in seclusion. Soon, the news of him breaking through to the unity of heaven and man realm spread. Everyone who heard the news was amazed. They also began to admire Lei Qingjuan's foresight. To be able to go against the objections of the masses and choose such an outstanding chief steward, his foresight was quite unique. Moreover, Lung Shiqi did not disappoint everyone. However, in terms of cultivation progress, no one could surpass him in everyone's memories. Unknowingly, the name Lu Xingji became even more famous. This news naturally spread to the Crown Prince's palace. Lei Haoge, who was dealing with state affairs, immediately became gloomy. During his Crown Prince succession ceremony, he had forcefully forced Lung Shiqi to submit to him. In the end, they parted on bad terms. Lei Haoge let out a message for Lung Shiqi to go back and think about it. However, who would have thought that Lung Shiqi didn't take his words seriously, and went into seclusion after returning? This seclusion lasted for half a year. This made Lei Haoge angry, but he couldn't just charge into the Dark Thunder Guards and make things difficult for the 4 chief stewards. He only wanted to wait for him to ascend the throne, and completely take over the Dark Thunder Guards before dealing with Lung Shiqi. At this time, he received news that Lung Shiqi had broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. While he was shocked and angry, his heart couldn't help but thump. Lei Haoge's cultivation talent wasn't very good, but he still had the basic knowledge of cultivation. In Shantai Prefecture, he clearly remembered that Lung Shiqi was only at the spirit aperture realm. In just 2 years he had reached the unity of heaven and man realm. Lei Haoge had never heard of such a monstrous cultivation speed. The more outstanding Lung Shiqi was, the more people would chase after him, and the more the upper echelons of the Thunderfire dynasty would value him. If Lei Haoge wanted to touch him again, it would be extremely difficult. Lei Haoge sat there, his expression fluctuating. After a while, a cold ruthlessness flashed through his eyes as he said, "Hidei, go invite Chief Steward Hai and Chief Steward Shintu of the Dark Thunder Guards. Remember, don't let anyone find out." Chapter 720. While Lung Shiqi continued his seclusion, Xingji Pavilion encountered quite a bit of trouble. On this day, Deputy Manager Ren Yi was dealing with the large and small affairs of Xingji Pavilion, when several other deputy managers and eunuchs hurriedly walked in with dissatisfaction on their faces. Seeing this, Ren Yi knew that something had happened and asked, "What happened?" He Feichen replied, "Ren Darren, not long ago, many of our brothers were sent back when they went to pick up missions. They said that the rules are different from before, but when we asked, they couldn't give us a reason. In short, they didn't give us any missions. Even the 2 deputy managers couldn't do it. They said that only Lu Darren could do it." Ren Yi was an old man who had been in the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters for several decades. From He Feichen's short words, he could tell that someone was clearly targeting them. The news of Lung Shiqi breaking through to unity of heaven and man realm had already spread. Generally speaking, after breaking through to this realm, it would take at least a year or so to consolidate, or else it would lead to an unstable foundation and affect one's future cultivation. Therefore, Lung Shiqi definitely couldn't come out of seclusion at this time. Others naturally knew this and wanted to use this time to cause trouble. And the only people who could target the 4 managers could only be the 4 managers. Ren Yi concluded that it was either Manager Hai or Manager Shintu who was secretly making a move. Ren Yi muttered, "Is the Great Commander at headquarters?" "The Great Commander has always appeared and disappeared unpredictably. We don't know his whereabouts, so it's almost impossible to find the Great Commander." He Feichen shook his head. "Then what about Manager Gao?" Eunuch Gao was Lung Shiqi's Shizhuan. They were all the 4 managers, so needless to say, They had to be on the same boat. Now that they couldn't find the great commander, they could only ask eunuch Gao for help. However, He Feichen suddenly sighed. News came from the palace yesterday. The humble prince ordered all the servants who had served the previous emperor to go to the imperial mausoleum to observe mourning for the previous emperor for 3 years. Eunuch Gao has already gone. Not good. Ren Yi realized that the situation wasn't good. The Grand Commander was not here. Eunuch Gao was ordered to observe the mourning period. And then there were people who made things difficult for Xingji court. All of these seemed to be driven by a mastermind. Just Manager Hai or Manager Shintu alone would definitely not be able to do this. The identity of the mastermind behind the scenes would only be higher. Missions were the foundation of the Dark Thunder Guards. Only by continuously completing missions would one be able to obtain large amounts of resources and merit points, and thus have a path to promotion. In the Dark Thunder Guards, except for those who were too old to be beaten, there were very few passive people. If they didn't have any missions, they couldn't just stay in Xingji Pavilion forever. In the long run, their Xingji Pavilion's reputation would be ruined. This matter was neither big nor small. In short, it was very difficult to deal with. Ren Yi rubbed the space between his eyebrows, feeling a headache coming on. Let's not alarm Lord Lu for now. Let the brothers finish the tasks at hand first. If there's nothing left, go into seclusion or spar. We can't be idle. Yes. He Feichen lowered his head and said. But this is only a temporary measure. I'm worried that the other side will have follow-up plans. After all, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. We can't just sit here and wait for death. How could I not know what you're saying? Relax, although us old fellows aren't as strong as before, the connections we've accumulated over the years are not few. I'll use other channels to find out who is targeting us. If there's no other way, I'll take on some private work so that Xingji Pavilion won't be wasted. Ren Yi already had a plan in his mind. He turned to the other 3 vice managers and said, You must restrain your subordinates for now. Don't cause trouble, and don't easily get into conflict with others. As long as Lord Lu comes out of seclusion, everything will be solved. Everyone agreed with Ren Yi's suggestion. Not letting them take on missions was only the first step against them. There would be more following, so it wasn't a big deal for them to endure it. When their lord comes out of seclusion, all problems would no longer exist. Actually, they didn't know when it started, but they already had this much confidence in Leng Shiqi. After discussing the countermeasures, everyone dispersed. Sure enough, something happened a few days later. An ordinary War Thunder Guard in Xingji Pavilion was found to have abused his power for personal gain, embezzled huge sums of money, and was caught with the stolen goods. Without informing Ren Yi, he was directly sent to prison. At the same time, many negative news about Xingji Pavilion spread rapidly, saying that they didn't want to make progress, were corrupt, and relied on the name of Leng Shiqi to be even more arrogant and domineering, and didn't put anyone in their eyes. There were also people who stood up and said that Leng Shiqi didn't kill Thousand Illusion Sword Elder at all, and that it was all deliberate. For a time, the reputation of Dark Thunder Guard Xingji Pavilion in the imperial capital was extremely bad. Not only that, but there would always be some bad things happening every once in a while. The most serious thing was that several subordinates under Manager Hai and Manager Shintu went to the 4 counties under Leng Shiqi's supervision, and their purpose was to seize power. This was equivalent to breaking the roots of Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi's strongest subordinates were all concentrated in the imperial capital, and only Pinghui Prefecture had Yan Ming and Deng Xinlei in charge. Unfortunately, the other 3 counties were not so optimistic. In the case where Leng Shiqi couldn't appear, his supervision power was in jeopardy. During this time, Ren Yi was so busy that he seemed to have lost a lot of hair. At first, he thought it was a general manager who was making a move, but in the end it was Manager Hai and Manager Shintu who were targeting them at the same time. Leng Shiqi was in seclusion. The commander was not here, and Eunuch Gao also went to the Imperial Mausoleum. Who could stop the 2 general managers from joining forces? At this time, all the deputy managers and internal supervisors of Xingji Pavilion gathered in the meeting hall to discuss what to do. Ren Yi said with a bitter face, Manager Hai and Manager Shinto are pressuring us step by step. If we are really robbed of the right to supervise a few provinces and counties, then Singji Pavilion will lose its foundation. What should we do? They are going overboard. Aren't they afraid that the commander will blame them if he finds out? Sigh, if the matter is settled, the commander will at most blame them. What can he do to them? Then we can't sit still and wait for death. Otherwise, I will personally go down and definitely not give up the supervision power. One of the deputy managers said. No. Renyi rejected. As a deputy manager, if you personally seize power, then the headquarters will lose a lot of power. I'm afraid there will be even more chaos. If it really doesn't work, we can only ask Sir Lu to come out of seclusion. As long as Sir appears, at least the current situation can be stabilized. It still won't work. Sir has just broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. If he doesn't consolidate his cultivation, it will affect his life. This won't work, that won't work. Are we just going to wait for power to be seized? At that time, even if Sir Lu comes out of seclusion, only an empty shell of Singji Pavilion will be left. Everyone instantly fell silent, because they really didn't have any good ideas. They could only watch as they slowly died like a frog being boiled in warm water. Just as everyone was feeling anxious, a voice suddenly came in. To make you all so anxious, what happened in Singji Pavilion? When everyone heard this voice, they were slightly stunned at first. But immediately they were pleasantly surprised. They turned their heads at the same time and saw a young man wearing a black and red official robe standing in front of the door of the meeting hall. It was Lung Shiqi. Chapter 721. Sir, you've finally come out. Greetings, sir. When everyone saw Lung Shiqi, it was as if they had seen their savior. They were all ecstatic. Even the weakest among them was an eunuch. However, they had been targeted and troubled for the past few months. Now Lung Shiqi's appearance had finally given them their greatest hope. Lung Shiqi smiled and sat in the empty seat in the center. He gestured for everyone to sit down. After sitting down, for some reason, everyone suddenly had a backbone. They were no longer as anxious as before. They keenly discovered that the reason was that Lung Shiqi exuded an indescribable aura. It seemed to be confidence, steadiness, and a little calmness. Even if something big happened, it was nothing in front of him. It was this kind of temperament that allowed everyone to calm down. In fact, it was indeed so. Lung Shiqi had a self-confidence that came from inside out. This confidence was not because he was arrogant, but because of his strength. It had been more than 3 months since he had broken through to the unity of heaven and man realm. These days, he had been cultivating spiritual techniques and comprehending the laws of heaven and earth. Unexpectedly, the process was unusually smooth, especially when he cultivated the heavenly cycle star god technique, the 5 god flowing light technique, and the 1000 illusion sword codex. It was as easy as water flowing through a canal. His comprehension was very high. Cultivating the spiritual techniques that were most suitable for him was really twice the result with half the effort. Now that he had succeeded in cultivating his spiritual technique, he had naturally merged it with his other spiritual techniques. Unfortunately, he had always been deducing it in his spiritual sea, and had never really fought with anyone. He still didn't know exactly how powerful it was. In addition, he also had some understanding of the earth element, the 4 elements, and the power of yin and yang. Compared to spiritual techniques, these powers that involved the laws of heaven and earth were the strongest. Therefore, even Lung Shiqi himself didn't know how strong he was now. However, he believed that if he unleashed his full strength, it would be easy for him to kill a late-stage unity of heaven realm expert. His current combat strength was definitely comparable to a peak-stage unity of heaven realm expert, or even higher. It could also be said that cultivators below the sky origin stage were no longer a threat to the Lung Shiqi. For example, Li Juning, who had almost killed him in the past, if they were to fight again, Lung Shiqi could kill him in an instant. Lung Shiqi was full of confidence because of this powerful strength. He pacified everyone and said calmly, "Tell me, what happened while I was in seclusion?" Renyi immediately summarized everything in the shortest and most concise manner. "My lord, it's like this. Right now, Other than Pinghui Prefecture, Tianshan Prefecture, and the other 2 prefectures are in imminent danger. However, Leng Shiqi did not care about this. Instead, he asked, "You said that Manager Hai and Manager Shen to work together to seize my supervision authority?" "That's right. If my lord came out of seclusion a few months later, I'm afraid all the supervision authority would be gone." Who would have thought that Leng Shiqi would shake his head? That's not the case. You may not know this, but the Grand Commander has already ordered that internal strife between the 4 great stewards is forbidden during the year before the new emperor ascends the throne. Thus, the people behind the scenes might not be them. Moreover, I was in seclusion, and Master only went to the imperial tomb to observe mourning. We are not dead, so Manager Hai and the others did not need to be in such a hurry to seize power. Whether it was the great commander appearing, me coming out of seclusion, or Master returning, their actions of seizing power did not have much meaning. Perhaps you were under too much pressure, and did not think of this. Ren Yi and the others immediately understood. Yes. My lord means that there is someone behind Manager Hai and Manager Shen too. That's right. Actually, I have already guessed who that person is. Leng Shiqi said leisurely. Who is it? Everyone asked at the same time. Leng Shiqi made a shushing gesture. I can't say. However, since I have already come out of seclusion early, you don't have to worry about this. Go and tell all the brothers that Xingji Pavilion will be back to normal in a few days. You have all been working hard these days. Have a good rest. Ren Yi and the others still hesitated. Even if Leng Shiqi came out of seclusion, in the face of such a serious predicament, he could not easily solve it with his own strength, right? However, since Leng Shiqi had already spoken, they could only do as he said. To be honest, they had been too tired these days. Even if their cultivations were high, they still felt physically and mentally exhausted. Then we will take our leave. Everyone left the meeting hall one by one. Right, my lord, you came out of seclusion early. Did you have any problems with your cultivation? Ren Yi asked before leaving. Leng Shiqi smiled gently. It's fine. There were 2 reasons why he came out of seclusion early. The first was that Lei Haoge's ascension ceremony was about to arrive. As one of the 4 chiefs, he had to attend. The second reason was that Delta Origi had told him roughly what had happened in Xingji Pavilion through the Netherlamp illusion. He naturally could not watch as he lost the right to supervise, so he came out of seclusion early. Fortunately, his cultivation base was very deep. His realm of unity of heaven and man was already very stable. Moreover, his cultivation of spiritual techniques had almost reached the point of saturation. As for the comprehension of the laws of heaven and earth, that was not something that could be done overnight. He could not rush it. When everyone left, Leng Shiqi's eyes revealed an undisguised murderous intent. He knew best who was playing tricks behind the scenes. In the imperial capital, the only one who had a grudge against him was Lei Haoge. If it was not him, who else could it be? However, Leng Shiqi did not expect Lei Haoge to have such great ability to persuade Manager Hai and Manager Shen to work together against Xingji Pavilion. Of these 2, one was very experienced, while the other had a military background. He did not know what benefits Lei Haoge had promised to persuade them. Furthermore, Eunuch Gao had been temporarily ordered to observe mourning for 3 years in the Imperial Mausoleum. It could be seen that this was also arranged by Lei Haoge. It seemed that he was not that useless. It was a pity that Lei Haoge had used his rare shrewdness to deal with Leng Shiqi. He did not know that he had brought a fatal disaster upon himself. That's right. Leng Shiqi had already decided to kill the crown prince, Lei Haoge, the future emperor of the Thunderfire dynasty. If others do not offend me, I will not offend them. If others offend me, I will kill them. In any case, Lei Haoge had not ascended the throne yet, and did not have many experts protecting him. As for whether his death would affect the Thunderfire dynasty, that was not something Leng Shiqi needed to consider. The only thing that puzzled Leng Shiqi was that Manager Hai and Manager Shen should have known that what they were doing did not have much meaning. Why did they still do it? I underestimated him, but it doesn't matter. There is no need to feel sorry for a dead person. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, then disappeared from the meeting hall. Chapter 722. In the Crown Prince's residence, Hidei was standing in front of Lei Haoge and talking about Xingji Pavilion. Your Highness, the authority to supervise Tianshan County is about to be taken away by Supervisor Hai. It won't be long before Lu Xingji becomes a loner. Lei Haoge was full of joy as he said disdainfully, "A mere Lu Xingji dares to be impudent in front of me. He should know how powerful I am and the importance of power. As long as Ben Gong is willing, even Manager Hai and Manager Shinta would have to be docile and obedient, let alone a useless manager like him." "That's true." The young eunuch serving tea beside him flattered. "Your Highness the Crown Prince is immeasurably virtuous. All the lands in the world belong to you. What for supervisors? When your Highness becomes the Emperor, won't their lives be in your hands?" "Ha ha ha ha. Well said, well said." Lei Haoge immediately laughed wildly. Hidei frowned secretly. It had been more than 10 months since Lei Haoge became the Crown Prince. There was not much time left until the 1-year deadline. Seeing that he was about to become the Emperor, and that there were many people sucking up to him, Lei Haoge became complacent. In particular, the series of events against Leng Shiqi were all secretly pushed by Lei Haoge. Everything was going as he expected, making him feel like the world was under his control. However, Hidei was not happy at all, because he had noticed that Lei Haoge was changing just as Leng Shiqi had said. He had become arrogant, narrow-minded, and even suspicious. Even Hidei, an old man who had followed Lei Haoge for many years, did not trust him as much as before. For half a year, Lei Haoge wanted to achieve something, but he also listened to the slanderous words of others and fiddled around. Not only did he not make any contributions, but he also made the imperial capital a mess and caused a lot of trouble. However, more people benefited from this, so there was not much negative news about him that reached the humble prince's ears. However, Hidei always wondered what Lei Haoge would become when he really ascended to the throne. Would the Thunderfire dynasty really be fine in his hands? Hidei even thought that it would be better to let the clumsy prince take the reins and let Lei Haoge be a puppet emperor. While Hidei was thinking this worriedly, Lei Haoge was chatting happily with the young eunuch. After a long while he finally said, "Oh Hidei, you're still here. Go back to your work." This servant obeys. Hidei bowed his head, but his heart felt even more depressed. Then Lei Haoge clapped his hands, and 2 rows of well-dressed young girls swam out of the room. They were all purple and had beautiful figures. The young eunuch yelled, "Start the dance and play the music." Hidei, who had just walked away, paused for 2 breaths. In the end he sighed and continued walking. He had told Lei Haoge many times that he should not indulge in wine, women and dancing all day long. If the humble king knew about it, it might affect his position as the emperor. At first Lei Haoge still listened to him, but now he was just putting on an act. Hidei shook his head as he walked. He thought back to when he was in Shantai County. Lei Haoge was not very smart, but at least he was very motivated. His cultivation talent was not good, but he did not stop cultivating every day. He was not shrewd enough, so he used his sincerity to rope in forces. However, the current Lei Haoge was like a different person. Hidei did not dare to recognize him. Inside the room, Lei Haoge was enjoying the service and singing of the maids with an intoxicated expression. However, all of a sudden, an invisible and strange force pressed down from all directions. The terrifying pressure instantly caused all the dancers to explode into clouds of blood mist. Before Lei Haoge could react, a dazzling golden light suddenly lit up in front of his chest. It condensed into a golden dragon the size of a human to protect him. However, this golden dragon only lasted for an instant before it was crushed. However, it was at this moment that a total of 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm descended from the sky. Assassins! Protect the crown prince. Quick! The 10 experts were the bodyguards responsible for protecting Lei Haoge. They usually did not reveal themselves, but in fact they were all hiding to protect him in the dark. After all, Lei Haoge was the future emperor. How could he not have a true expert protecting him? These 10 people successively used their methods to protect Lei Haoge. However, what shocked them was that they could not communicate with the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth at this moment. As an expert of the unity of heaven and man realm, What they were most proud of was using the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth. However, there was no elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles. It was as if the heaven and earth had been isolated. But how was this possible? While everyone was in shock, they saw a black ball the size of a thumb appear in the middle of them. Suddenly, heaven and earth twisted and distorted the void. Everything in the room was constantly being pulled and twisted. Finally, they were sucked into the small black ball, including everything, including the 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm, including Lei Hauga. In the end, not even a drop of blood was left. Hidei, who had just walked not far, suddenly felt a feeling that made his heart palpitate. He also heard the shouting. When he hurriedly turned around, he saw Lei Hauga and all the other experts of the unity of heaven and man realm being twisted into pieces. Boom. Hidei's brain seemed to be thrown into a bomb, which made him almost lose consciousness in an instant. His master, the current crown prince Lei Hauga, who would ascend the throne and become the emperor in a month, was dead, under the protection of 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm. He died in the blink of an eye. Hidei was frightened and horrified at the same time. He felt even more incredible. He himself was at the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and was also preparing to break through the unity of heaven and man realm. Therefore, he had also touched the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth. However, he did not even notice the fluctuation of the elemental spiritual power of heaven and earth just now. However, he saw the tragic death of Lei Hauga and all the other experts with his own eyes. This meant that the 10 experts of the unity of heaven and man realm were killed before they could make a move. What was more terrible was that Hidei did not even feel the fluctuation of the spiritual power. What kind of realm could kill so many experts of the unity of heaven and man realm, without using any spiritual power? He was afraid that Tianyuan realm might not be able to do it. The most important thing was that Lei Hauga was dead. The crown prince was killed in the crown prince mansion. This was simply a big joke. Although Hidei was very disappointed with Lei Hauga, he still treated Lei Hauga as his own child in his heart. He witnessed the tragic death of Lei Hauga and suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. The huge mental impact made Hidei gasp violently for a few times. His eyes were gray and full of despair. At this time, a large number of spirit cultivators rushed over, among which there were many experts. However, when they ran over, they only saw an empty area and Hidei, who was lying on the ground and lost his soul. These people were very confused. Where was the crown prince? Chapter 723. Eunuch He, we heard there was an assassin. Where is the crown prince? There is no trace of the assassin. Where is the crown prince's palace? They were all confused. Even if there was an assassin, he couldn't have killed the crown prince without making a sound. Besides, they didn't sense any spiritual power fluctuation. That meant there was no fight. Where did the crown prince go? How did his palace disappear? Puff. Hidei was so anxious that he spat out a mouthful of blood. He said weakly, "The crown prince was assassinated. He was assassinated." Hearing that, the others were stunned. They couldn't believe it. They looked at each other and felt that Hidei was joking. Where was this place? It was the royal capital of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It was the crown prince's palace. Not to mention the guards. The crown prince must have more powerful guards around him. Even a Sky Origin stage cultivator would not be able to kill the crown prince quietly. Even a Sky Origin stage cultivator wouldn't have much hope. There were many Sky Origin stage cultivators in the royal capital. If a Sky Origin stage cultivator came to assassinate the crown prince, he wouldn't be able to get away. That was why they all believed the crown prince was assassinated. However, the crown prince and his palace had disappeared. That meant things weren't as simple as they seemed. Just as everyone was in a daze, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the sky above everyone. It was a Sky Origin stage cultivator. The appearance of these 3 people made everyone realize that the situation seemed to be really serious. Not only that, but there were also 8 or 9 figures standing in the void in succession. Each of them had a grave expression on their faces. The guards were all stunned. They couldn't believe they saw over a dozen Sky Origin stage cultivators at the same time. Normally, They wouldn't see so many powerful cultivators in their entire lives. It was a feast for their eyes. However, there were so many Sky Origin stage cultivators in the Crown Prince's palace. Something big must have happened. Did something happen to the Crown Prince? If that was the case, all of them standing here would not be able to escape punishment. They might even be dragged away to be beheaded. The Sky Origin stage cultivators in the sky didn't care about them. Some of them closed their eyes as if they were sensing something. Some of them frowned. Some of them looked gloomy. One of them said, "You all felt it, right? It is indeed the power of the laws of heaven and earth, the power of the laws of earth. It seems to be the law of gravity. What a desirable power." I didn't expect a Tongxian realm expert to personally come to the imperial capital. The Tongxian stage was a stage above the Tianyuan stage. Such experts were rare in the world. Every single one of them was an expert who could control the laws of heaven and earth. Their words were law, and they could move mountains and overturn seas with a single thought. That's strange. That person from Dynasty wasn't alarmed at all. It's clear that the person who attacked is on par with that person. What's even stranger is why he attacked Lei Haoge. He's just a useless ruler. That's true. There's something strange about this. It's just the death of a crown prince. The important thing is to find out who did it. It doesn't matter if Lei Haoge dies or not. We can't lose face. That person can't have gone far. I suggest that we activate the Great Thunder Flame formation. Even if he's a Tongxian realm martial artist, he has to stay in the imperial capital. This is not something we can decide. While these Tianyuan realm experts were talking, a man in a golden robe arrived. He was the clumsy ruler. He looked at the empty crown prince residence and had an ominous premonition. He asked, "I was in the dragon vein preparing for Lei Haoge's ascension. What happened just now? Where is the crown prince?" "He's dead," a Tianyuan realm expert said calmly. He sounded like a stray dog that had died on the street. The clumsy ruler's eyes suddenly turned golden. He glanced around the crown prince residence and said, "There's the aura of the law of heaven and earth. Could it be a Tongxian realm expert?" A Tongxian realm expert appeared in the imperial capital and killed Lei Haoge. This was a great threat to the Thunderblaze dynasty. If this Tongxian realm expert was crazy enough to attack the imperial capital, the entire imperial capital would be destroyed. However, the clumsy ruler couldn't figure it out. There were detection arrays set up around the imperial capital. Any aura of a Tianyuan realm expert or above would be detected. Even if the arrays were evaded, there were still Tongxian realm experts from the Thunderblaze dynasty hiding in the imperial capital. If it was really a Tongxian realm expert, it was impossible for them not to be detected. What the hell is going on? Your Highness, should we activate the heaven-destroying Thunderblaze formation? Don't act rashly. If we push that guy too far, even if we kill him, the imperial capital will suffer a great loss. Let me go and ask Master Qiao to come out first. Now you guys are all scattered around the imperial capital. We can't let anything happen to you, the clumsy ruler said. We understand. What they said was blocked, so the people below couldn't hear them. The dozen Tianyuan realm experts flashed and disappeared. The clumsy ruler looked at the people below and asked, "Has the crown prince made any enemies recently?" The people looked at each other. They all knew Lei Haoge had caused a lot of trouble and some people must be dissatisfied with him. However, they wouldn't go so far as to assassinate the crown prince. Therefore no one said anything. The clumsy ruler suddenly snorted. It was as if the power of heaven had descended. Under the gaze of his golden eyes, everyone felt chills down their spines. They were all frightened. Your Highness, I only know that the crown prince doesn't get along well with some generals. I heard that the crown prince has some conflicts with the heavenly treasure chamber of commerce. The crown prince has been picking on Steward Liu of the Dark Thunder Guards. The crown prince has asked for a lot of dancers in the past 2 months. They are all top prostitutes in the brothels. That is why he is in trouble. The more they talked, the more excited they became. It seemed this was a good chance for them to atone for their sins. They told the people about all the ugly things Lei Haoge had done recently. The clumsy ruler's face turned darker and darker. He didn't know Lei Haoge had done so many stupid things. He had offended all the powerful forces and noble families in the imperial capital. Although it wasn't a big deal, it was enough to show how arrogant Lei Haoge was in private. Was such a man really fit to be the crown prince? Even if Lei Haoge didn't die today, the clumsy ruler would have to reconsider. In the end, the clumsy ruler waved his sleeve and gave an order. You all go to the heavenly prison to receive your punishment. If you don't obey, all your relatives will be killed. After that, he disappeared, leaving the people behind with gloomy faces. Leng Shiqi, who had assassinated Lei Haoge and was mistaken as a Tongxian realm cultivator, had already returned to the Xingji pavilion. He was holding his chest in pain. There was blood on the corner of his mouth. With my current cultivation, it is indeed a bit difficult for me to use the law of gravity. Chapter 724. Leng Shiqi had killed Lei Haoge and 10 oneness of heaven and man experts within 2 breaths. He had not used any spiritual technique, but the power of the laws of heaven and earth. To be more precise, it was the law of gravity. His greatest gain during this period of seclusion was not breaking through to the oneness of heaven and man realm, nor was it cultivating more level 7 spiritual techniques. It was that he had a preliminary grasp of the law of gravity and the law of earth. The law of gravity contained gravity and anti-gravity. Leng Shiqi had used the extreme anti-gravity technique to kill Lei Haoge and the others, the black hole space. In terms of the law of earth, he had comprehended the Qiankuan earth traversal technique, which allowed him to travel 100 miles in an instant. It was a secret technique that was above all movement techniques. However, Leng Shiqi had only just begun to comprehend it. Moreover, with his current cultivation, he could not activate too much of the power of the laws of heaven and earth. Otherwise, he would suffer a certain backlash. Not long ago, when he assassinated Lei Haoge, he could only force himself to his limit in order to not leave anyone alive, which caused him to suffer some internal injuries. However, Leng Shiqi was even more aware of his current strength. The 10 oneness of heaven and man experts were all in the middle and late stages of the oneness of heaven and man realm. With this kind of strength, it would be easy for them to destroy a first-rate sect. They could even threaten the top sections. However, such a powerful force had been killed by Leng Shiqi in one move. It could be said that Leng Shiqi's current limit of strength was close to that of a sky origin expert. Leng Shiqi looked at his palm, then clenched it tightly. The feeling of holding a powerful force fascinated him. Today he had also clearly felt the benefits of strength. If he was just an ordinary oneness of heaven and man realm, there was nothing he could do against Lei Haoge's suppression. He could either bow and submit to him, or wait for him to take revenge after he ascended the throne. Either way, it was extremely disadvantageous for Leng Shiqi. Now that he had used his strength to directly kill Lei Haoge, the mastermind behind the scenes, all the difficulties would naturally be solved. Even though Leng Shiqi could not guess why Manager Hai and Manager Shintu were persuaded by Lei Haoge, it was most likely because Lei Haoge had promised them various benefits after ascending the throne. But now that Lei Haoge was dead, who was going to give them benefits? As such, Manager Hai and Manager Shintu would have to reconsider if they wanted to continue targeting Leng Shiqi. As the intelligence agency of the Thunderfire dynasty, the Dark Lightning Guards were the first to receive news of Lei Haoge's death. Everyone who heard about it was so shocked that their jaws dropped. The Crown Prince was killed in the Crown Prince's residence. This was too absurd and too crazy. When Manager Hai and Manager Shintu found out about this, they were also in disbelief. Then they quickly met up. Manager Hai said with a worried expression, "Shintu, Lei Haoge is dead. What should we do?" Shintu Zhen clasped his hands in front of his chest and said without turning his head, "Lu Xingji's troubles are not small now. Let's see how he cleans up the mess." Alas! General Manager Hai sighed. The Grand Commander wants to nurture Lu Xingji, but he wants us to be the bad guys. Originally, we only wanted to use Lei Haoge's identity and power to suppress Lu Xingji. If Lu Xingji came out of seclusion, he would be able to guess that Lei Haoge was the one who ordered us to do this. Even if he wanted to retaliate, he would find trouble with Lei Haoge. Now that Lei Haoge is dead with Lu Xingji's temper, he will definitely use forceful methods to take revenge on us. Lu Xingji's breakthrough to the unity of heaven and man realm caused quite a commotion. I estimate that he is at least at the middle stage of the unity of heaven and man realm. In the Dark Lightning Guards, other than you and me, there aren't many who can suppress him. Shintujin also felt that it was a little troublesome. However, they were not too concerned about Lei Haoge's death. Logically speaking, the Crown Prince's death was a huge matter. However, in their hearts and the eyes of the Sky Yuan experts, it did not seem to be a big deal. In fact, not having a Crown Prince, or rather, not having an Emperor, was the best outcome for them. The Dark Lightning Guards were currently in a situation where no one was in charge. The Grand Commander was also not often in the imperial capital. Manager Hai and the other managers could be said to be extremely powerful. Lei Haoge's death had indeed shocked them. However, they were even more surprised than shocked. Furthermore, the Emperor Botch governance did not order them to investigate the Crown Prince's assassin. Since that was the case, they naturally did not care about the matter and just let it go. The Emperor Botch governance did not order the Dark Lightning Guards to interfere because he thought the assassin was a Tongxian expert. The Dark Lightning Guard's highest cultivation level was Heavenly Venerable He Yan. However, even he did not have the qualifications to investigate a Tongxian expert. If they really used the Dark Lightning Guards, it would cause too much of a commotion and alert the enemy. While the two of them were talking, an extremely crazy idea suddenly appeared in Manager Hai's mind. He thought to himself, could Lei Haoge have been killed by Lu Xingji? However, he immediately discarded this unrealistic idea. He did not even say it out loud. He knew that if he said it out loud, Shintujin would only laugh at him. His Highness the Crown Prince is dead. Yet the two managers are still so safe. It is truly admirable. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's voice came from outside. Manager Hai and Manager Shinta looked at each other. He came so fast. In their minds, Leng Shiqi should still be in closed-door training at this time. Creak. Leng Shiqi pushed the door open and entered without hesitation. However, the Dark Lightning Guards guarding the door stood there motionless like wooden chickens. Manager Hai and Manager Shinta were slightly shocked. At a glance, they could see that the guards at the door had fallen into the illusion. However, those guards were all experts of Gang Spirit Realm. They did not even have time to react before they fell into the illusion. It could be seen that Leng Shiqi's attainments in illusion were extremely high now. At the same time, they also understood that Leng Shiqi came here today to demonstrate his power. Shintujin sneered in his heart. I want to see how much power you can play. Before the two of them had time to speak, Leng Shiqi raised one hand high and opened his 5 fingers. The sky suddenly changed, and the spiritual power of heaven and earth became extremely violent. In an instant, 5 divine shadows of hundreds of feet high descended. The divine power descended and suppressed the mortal world. 5 divine throne. Under the pressure of the divine power, Manager Hai and Manager Shinta felt as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Manager Hai formed a seal with both hands, and the green light around him rushed into the sky. The shadow of a green bird appeared behind him. Endless primordial spirit power surged out. There was a strange rhythm that made Leng Shiqi's 5 divine throne shake. Shintujin roared to the sky like a divine beast. He punched out, and the terrifying fist power shook the void as if it was the end of the world. He shattered 3 divine shadows with one punch. The two of them almost broke Leng Shiqi's 5 divine throne when they joined forces. However, Leng Shiqi did not attack again. Instead, he stood quietly in place, because he had achieved his goal. Manager Hai and Shintujin both looked deeply at Leng Shiqi. A person who had just broken through had directly skipped the initial stage and reached the middle stage of unity of heaven and man realm. That was not all. The power that Leng Shiqi erupted was already close to Manager Hai's level. He had to go all out to resist it. What kind of terrifying power was this? What was even more terrifying was how long Leng Shiqi had been cultivating for. Manager Hai remembered clearly that when Leng Shiqi had just arrived at the imperial capital, he had made a bet with Eunuch Gao. In the end, he had lost to one of Eunuch Gao's guards. At that time, Leng Shiqi was only at the spirit aperture realm. In a short 2 years, the person in front of him had already gained the qualifications to speak with them as equals. Manager Hai flipped his hand, and a stone chair rose from the ground. Sit. Chapter 725. Leng Shiqi smiled lightly. He knew that he finally had the qualifications to speak directly to the 4 directors. He sat down on the stone chair. There was nowhere else to sit because everything around him had been destroyed by the aftermath of their fight. After Leng Shiqi sat down, he went straight to the point. Director Hai, Director Shintu, as soon as I came out of seclusion, I found that the Xingji Pavilion has caused quite a bit of trouble. Even the 4 provinces under my command are in turmoil. Do the 2 directors not need to explain? If Leng Shiqi dared to say such things in front of them in the past, he would at least be seriously injured. However, it was different now. Director Hai stroked his long beard and looked amiable. I'm sure Director Liu has already guessed the person who really wants to deal with you. The 2 of us are only following orders. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards are still the Dark Thunder Guards of the Imperial Court. He pushed all the blame onto Lei Haoge with one sentence. After all, he was speaking the truth. Shen Tizhen even nodded his head in a serious manner. Pushing all the blame onto a dead person. Do you think I can go to the underworld to settle the score with Lei Haoge? The 2 of you, my Xingji Pavilion is very chaotic right now. I came here today for no other reason than to demand an explanation. As Leng Shiqi spoke, a glass-like spiritual sword appeared in his hand. The moment this sword appeared, it caused the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to vibrate. Leng Shiqi sat on the stone chair, but he felt like he was one with heaven and earth. Level 8 Earth Weapon, 1000 Illusion Dao Sword. Shock flashed through the eyes of Director Hai and Shen Tizhen. Even they did not have a level 8 Earth Weapon. This was something they yearned for even in their dreams. Just now, they had experienced Leng Shiqi's current strength. He was definitely not weaker than them. Adding the 1000 Illusion Dao Sword, he had even slightly surpassed them. They smiled bitterly in their hearts. Actually, they had thought of suppressing Leng Shiqi in the past. Because once Leng Shiqi grew up and joined forces with Eunuch Gao, they would have half of the Dark Thunder Guard's authority. This was not a good thing for them. However, after Lei Qingjuan's death, they knew that the Grand Commander would not allow them to fight among themselves. When Leng Shiqi went into seclusion to break through, they gradually gave up on this idea. In truth, all of this had been arranged by Grand Commander Heavenly Venerable Black Flame. Celestial Lord He Yin knew that Leng Shiqi had great potential, but he was afraid that if his mentality and strength were not equal, he would become arrogant and condescending. That kind of person was only suitable to be a general who charged and broke through enemy lines, not a commander. Thus, when Heavenly Sage He Yin learned that Leng Shiqi had a grudge with Lei Haoge, he planned to use this matter to temper Leng Shiqi's state of mind. But no one expected that Lei Haoge would suddenly die, and Leng Shiqi's strength would become so terrifying. Now, other than Empyrean Black Flame personally taking action, it was likely that no one could suppress him. Thus, Manager Hai and Shen Tizhen were in a difficult position. Of course, they were not afraid of Leng Shiqi. If they continued to cause trouble, it would only get worse, and in the end, it would be difficult to resolve. However, it was impossible for them to lower their heads like this. Otherwise, where would they put their faces? Manager Hai's eyes flashed as he said, "Manager Gao is not here, and you still dare to act like this?" Manager Hai, I have lived until now and have never relied on anyone. I only believe in one thing, and that is that strength is respected. Leng Shiqi stroked the blade of the 1000 Illusion Dao Sword, and the blade immediately hummed. Then there seemed to be a sword hum in the sky. Seeing that Leng Shiqi was still so strong, Shen Tizhen's heart burned with anger. Young man, we acknowledge your strength, but in this world, strength is not everything. Especially in a faction, you need to know how to network. Otherwise, sooner or later, you will not have a good ending. Leng Shiqi did not care about the hidden threat in Shen Tizhen's words. Perhaps, if the 2 of you do not have an explanation today, I would like to test how strong I am. He really had some fighting spirit. Experts like Manager Hai and Shen Tizhen were not comparable to other Unity of Heaven realms. They could be said to be between Unity of Heaven and Man and Heavenly Origin realms. Fighting with such experts was truly satisfying. The 3 of them fell silent. The atmosphere had already frozen to a freezing point, and the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was secretly surging. Now all that was needed was a fuse, and they would really fight. Enough. Suddenly, a ball of black flames appeared above the three of them. Soon after, the black flames dissipated, revealing Empyrean Black Flame's face. "Greetings, Grand Commander." The three of them stood up and said at the same time. Empyrean Black Flame looked at Lung Shiqi a few more times before saying, "The three of you Grand Managers are at daggers drawn here. What are you doing?" "Lu Xingji, I already know about the Xingji Pavilion." "Shen Tizhen, the two of you will each give Lu Xingji the authority to supervise a prefecture. Right and wrong will be written off. If anyone still wants to scheme against each other, don't blame this Empyrean for not caring about my reputation. His Highness the Crown Prince died in an accident. All of you will follow me into the palace to discuss important matters." Manager Hai and Shen Tizhen felt bitter. This matter was clearly the Grand Commander's idea, but in the end, they had to share the authority. However, this meant that the Grand Commander also acknowledged Lung Shiqi's strength, and he was qualified to have the authority to supervise 6 prefectures. Lung Shiqi secretly smiled. He had come on this trip with such a strong performance. He had originally planned to fish for some benefits, but now he had obtained 2 prefectures, which exceeded his expectations. Thus the three of them cupped their fists together and said, "This lowly one obeys." Soon, the three of them followed Empyrean Black Flame to the palace's main hall. At this time, the highest level of the Thunder Flame dynasty was basically all here. In this group of people, some were happy, while others were sad. Many of them had flattered Lei Haoge for a long time, and had done many ridiculous things for him. They had originally planned to please the future emperor, which was of course a happy occasion. However, who knew that Lei Haoge would suddenly die before ascending the throne? There were also some people who had long disliked Lei Haoge. They might have been eliminated by Lei Haoge in the future. Now that Lei Haoge was dead, everything was better. When everyone had arrived, the humble prince first asked Empyrean Black Flame, "I heard that the previous 4 managers, Li Jueqing, died very strangely?" No one knew why the humble prince suddenly cared about Li Jueqing, who had died a year ago. Empyrean Black Flame also said thoughtfully, "That's right. With Li Jueqing's strength, it's impossible for him to die in the hands of someone in the unity of heaven and man realm so easily. At that time, I captured a trace of the power of the earth at the scene, so it's possible that it was done by someone in the heavenly origin realm who cultivated the earth element technique. And it's at the peak of the heavenly origin realm. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any clues later, so we could only leave it as it is." However, the humble prince showed an expression that said, "What I'm going to say next must not be leaked. I speculate that the person who killed Li Jueqing and the crown prince may be the same person. That person must be someone in the metaphysic realm." Chapter 726. When the 3 words Tongxian realm fell into the ears of the crowd, it was no doubt as shocking as a sudden clap of thunder. It was the same for those civil officials in the hall, who didn't have much cultivation base. They were all in high positions, and they knew some secrets that ordinary people didn't know. The Sky Origin realm was not the end of cultivation. There was an even higher realm that controlled the laws of heaven and earth, known as the Heaven and Earth Profound Realm. It was also known as the Tongxian realm. There were very few Sky Origin stage cultivators in the world. One Sky Origin stage cultivator was enough to support a top-tier sect. There were only about 50 top sects in the world, and the difference between the top sects was huge. The Thousand Illusions Sword sect was at the bottom, with only the Thousand Illusions Sword Sovereign supporting it. The Mountain Sea sect had 2 or 3 Sky Origin realm experts, which was the norm. The Bloodrobe Pavilion, Imperial Beast House, and Blood Beast sect all had several Sky Origin realm experts, and were considered to be at the front. The top sects were at the top 5 sections. For example, the 10,000 Laws Mysterious sect had 9 Sky Origin realm experts. The Yin and Yang halls, the 3 great empires, and the 4 Saint Spirit realms were all transcendent powers with more than 10 Sky Origin realm experts. The Thunderfire dynasty was a colossus, and their Sky Origin realm experts were mainly concentrated in the Imperial Consecration Hall and the military. They had more than 30 Sky Origin realm experts, which was terrifying. Including the sects ranked on the World Sect ranking and the lone cultivators, There were only a few hundred heavenly origin stage cultivators on the entire falling star continent. The reason why the Thunderfire dynasty was called a transcendent power was not only because they had sky origin realm experts, but also because they had Tongxian experts. The Tongxian realm was almost unknown to ordinary people. More than 70% of the cultivators in the world did not even know about this realm. This was because this realm was too far away, and those who had this level of cultivation could be counted with one's fingers. There were only 7 known Tongxian realm experts in the world. They were from the 3 great empires and the 4 Saint Spirit realms respectively. As for the Yin and Yang halls, they were too mysterious. No one knew how many Tongxian realm experts they had. Thus, when the Shoddy Prince mentioned that a Tongxian realm expert might have come to the capital and killed the 4 great chief stewards and the crown prince, the shock was too great. When Leng Shiqi heard this, a look of shock appeared on his face, but he was laughing in his heart. Someone actually mistook him for a Tongxian realm expert. This way, no matter how they investigated, it would be impossible for them to trace it back to him. In fact, in terms of the laws of heaven and earth, Leng Shiqi did indeed have the qualifications to reach the Tongxian realm. It could also be said that he had already paved the path to the Tongxian realm for himself. As long as he didn't die prematurely, it was almost certain that he would break through to the Sky Origin stage. It was even possible for him to reach the Sky Origin stage. While everyone was still immersed in shock, Heavenly Venerable Black Flames was puzzled. There is indeed such a possibility, but why would that mysterious mystic comprehending realm cultivator want to kill Li Jueqing and His Highness the Crown Prince? When he killed Li Jueqing, the Crown Prince was not yet the Crown Prince. Could it be that Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince have something in common? He immediately hit the nail on the head. It was impossible to kill someone for no reason. There must be a reason. If Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince were both killed by the same person, it meant that the two of them had something in common. For example, having a common enemy. Those who could stand in the main hall were all smart people. They quickly thought of this point. Leng Shiqi did not panic. He was indeed worried about the Crown Prince and Li Jueqing, but he believed that others would not suspect him. First of all, Li Jueqing had dealt with Leng Shiqi secretly. No one knew about it except for Leng Shiqi and the Li clan. Now that the Li clan had been destroyed, Li Zhizh and the Li clan's 4th uncle, who knew the truth, were also dead. Therefore, no one knew about the grudge between Leng Shiqi and the Li clan. At most, it could only be said that Eunuch Gao and Li Jueqing had a grudge. As Eunuch Gao's disciple, Leng Shiqi naturally stood on the opposite side. This point alone was not worthy of suspicion. If anyone wanted to suspect, they had to suspect Eunuch Gao. As for the grudge between the Crown Prince and Leng Shiqi, it was actually not that big. Although He Dai and a few others knew about it, the Crown Prince had offended many people and formed many grudges. One more Leng Shiqi would not make a difference. Of course, Leng Shiqi was also someone who had a grudge against both Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince. Perhaps he would be suspected, but that grudge was far from enough to kill. Moreover, in the eyes of outsiders, Leng Shiqi did not have the qualifications to kill Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince. Unfortunately, they were all wrong. Leng Shiqi not only dared to kill, but also had the strength to kill them. Everyone was deep in thought, speculating about who the murderer was, and whether or not he was hiding nearby. Little did they know that the real murderer was standing right next to them. Leng Shiqi looked at everyone with the intention of watching a good show. During this time, Heavenly Master He Yin did glance at Leng Shiqi, but he quickly looked away. After a while he said, "Now that Li Jueqing and the Crown Prince are dead, they might have angered someone in private, but we don't know." "You're right." The humble prince had not appeared for many years, and did not know about the grudge between them. He agreed with Heavenly Master He Yan's opinion. "I've already gone to see old Master Qiao. He has already left the mountain. As long as that mysterious metaphysical realm cultivator appears again, he will definitely be discovered. By then, no matter how strong he is, we must let him know the strength of the Thunderflame dynasty." At the end of his speech, the humble prince exuded a fierce and domineering aura. The might of a king was fully displayed. Leng Shiqi decided not to use the power of law so easily near the imperial capital in the future. If he was caught by that old Master Qiao, he would definitely die. The dignity of the Thunderflame dynasty cannot be touched. Prime Minister Mo Linhui said. However, I'm worried about something. The crown prince was supposed to ascend the throne next month, but he died in an accident. I'm very heartbroken. However, the country can't be without a ruler. The throne of the Thunderflame dynasty has been empty for almost a year. We should appoint another crown prince as soon as possible to reassure the people. I summoned you here to discuss this matter. The humble prince also felt a headache when the crown prince was mentioned. The late Emperor Lei Qingjun had long deprived Lei Haoyan and the other princes of the right to compete for the position of crown prince. Before he died, he could only give the position of crown prince to Lei Haoga, who was a general among dwarves. However, Lei Haoga had died. In this way, there seemed to be no suitable candidate among the remaining princes. King Hui and King An were definitely not suitable. Lei Haoyan and Lei Haoran were not suitable either. Otherwise, they would be violating the late emperor's decree. What should they do? Do you have any candidates to recommend? The humble prince asked. The civil and military officials in the imperial court whispered to each other, but after a long time, no one stood out to say anything. Chapter 727. The humble prince sighed. It was quite funny that the Thunderblaze dynasty couldn't even find a successor for the throne. In fact, the Thunderblaze dynasty was so powerful that the person sitting on the throne didn't have to be smart or hardworking. As long as the person didn't waste money and was an honest emperor, the Thunderblaze dynasty didn't need the emperor to do anything. However, people like King An and King Hui weren't worthy of the throne. The best of them were directly excluded from the list of candidates by the late Emperor Lei Qingjun. Therefore, it was very awkward. The humble prince regretted agreeing to let Lei Qingjun go crazy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to do anything. He could continue to cultivate in seclusion and explore the metaphysical realm. That was what he really wanted. Otherwise, he could have sat on the throne decades ago. Now, the humble prince only wanted to find someone who could sit on the throne peacefully and not cause any trouble. Just when he was having a headache, he and Heavenly Master He Yin suddenly stared at each other. They were both ethereal realm cultivators. One was the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, and the other was a prince who didn't care about the throne at all. However, the two of them had such expressions on their faces. It was obvious that something big had happened. Everyone felt that something was wrong. Some of them secretly wondered if the mysterious metaphysical realm cultivator had made his move again. The cultivators in the basilica looked outside the basilica at the same time. Their eyes were filled with shock, including Lung Shiqi. They could clearly feel that there were more than 30 bursts of powerful spiritual energy outside the basilica, like a volcanic eruption. Even the atmospheric energy was being stirred up. Lung Shiqi and the others rushed out of the basilica. They saw more than 30 figures standing in the air and looking down at them. They were all ethereal realm cultivators. Everyone secretly gasped. Since when did ethereal realm cultivators become so common? What kind of force could have so many ethereal realm cultivators? What were they trying to do by breaking into the palace? The humble prince looked at those people with a sullen face. He couldn't figure out how so many Sky Origin stage cultivators could get into the royal capital without being noticed by the array. He only knew that if those people attacked together, the entire royal capital would be in ruins by now. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame recognized them one by one. Elder Bu from the wonderful 10,000 Laws sect, the high priest of the wizard tribe, the sect master of the Purgatory Demon sect, the sect master of the Divine Dueling Mountain, the vice pavilion master of the Blood Cloak Pavilion, the palace master of the Sky Expanse Palace, the supreme elder of the Ultimate Saber Hall, the sect master of the Evil Heart Sword sect, the Mountain Sea Sect's Pavilion Master Huang, the alliance master of the Five Flags Alliance. Every time he said a name, the hearts of the others would beat violently. These people were the leaders of the top sects on the world sect ranking. They were also the strongest. Each of them would cause a commotion if they appeared alone. But now, all of them had appeared at the same time. This kind of status and strength gave people a pressure that was difficult to describe with words. Even many masters of Gang Spirit Realm found it hard to breathe and blacked out. They couldn't believe what they had seen. Lung Shiqi also found it hard to believe. Those ethereal realm cultivators were all powerful figures. He had seen some of them and was familiar with some of them. Elder Bu of Wonderful Sect had been here at Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet. At that time, he was watched by 8 masters of the Imperial Hall of Worship. He must have been furious. Head Huang of Mountain Sea Sect had shown up when the Phantom Spirit Secret Land was opened. He even used his own power to maintain the entrance of the secret land. As for Ink Frost Ghost, the deputy head of the Blood-Robed Pavilion, he was even more so. At this time, Ink Frost Ghost secretly transmitted a message to Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi, seize this opportunity. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed. What does Ink Frost Ghost mean? Then, the masters of the Imperial Hall of Worship finally arrived. When they saw so many ethereal realm cultivators, they were also shocked. These experts from the Imperial Consecration Hall were used to being high and mighty, but now they were facing 2 times their number of experts. Among them were the sect leader and Grand Elder. Even the Imperial Consecration Hall couldn't withstand it. The humble prince looked at Elder Bu, who was standing in the front. What do you want to do by breaking into the palace? Elder Bu snorted. What do we want to do? Lei Qingjue, you really know how to play dumb. 1 year ago, you were really awe-inspiring when you destroyed dozens of sections. But do you know that the imperial capital of the Thunderblaze dynasty can disappear from the world at any time? Lung Shiqi looked at the ethereal realm cultivators in the sky and finally understood. These masters came from various top sections. 90% of the top sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty were here. The only reason they came here was to deter. It could also be said that they came from the spirit cultivation sect's counterattack. 1 year ago, Lei Qingjue destroyed 3 top sects and dozens of first-rate sects in a fit of anger, shocking the world. Originally, everyone thought that the spirit cultivator sects in the Thunderfire dynasty would be afraid of being beaten, and would be well-behaved. But they miscalculated. Now all the top sects in the Thunderblaze dynasty, except for the Jadefall Island near the Eastern Sea, had secretly joined forces to break into the palace. One had to know that these top sects didn't get along well with each other. Yet, they could disregard their former enmity and directly break into the palace. It could be seen that the Thunderblaze dynasty had forced them into a corner. Looks like you all came with ill intentions. The humble prince's tone also turned cold. Elder Bu was even more unyielding. So what if they come with ill intentions? I really want to know what the Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty will do when all the experts of the Imperial Consecration Hall of the Thunderflame dynasty, and all the courtiers and generals in the imperial capital are dead. Hearing this, the humble prince's face turned gloomy. The officials below were even more shocked. If they all died, the Thunderblaze dynasty would definitely fall into an unprecedented state of weakness. The Starfall dynasty and Northern Wei dynasty naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. At that time, they would definitely mobilize their troops to attack. The few Heaven Origin Realm experts at the border would definitely not be able to defend against the joint attack of the 2 dynasties. The Thunderblaze dynasty was in danger. No one would have thought that the spirit cultivation sects would be such a threat to the Thunderblaze dynasty. How did you all come in? The humble prince shouted angrily, almost losing his composure. The Thunderblaze dynasty had naturally been on guard against these Heaven Origin Realm experts. Otherwise, it would be terrible if they came to cause trouble for no reason. Therefore, there were a large number of high-grade formations near the imperial capital. As long as an expert above the Heaven Origin Realm approached, they would be discovered. But where did they come from? At this moment, the void suddenly shattered into a pitch-black hole. An old man with white hair and a youthful face walked out. With the Sky Amplification Palace Lord here, those formations are nothing. The humble prince immediately felt confident when he saw this old man. He immediately greeted respectfully, "Old Man Xiao." This old man was the Thunderblaze dynasty's mystic comprehending realm expert. Once he appeared, the Imperial Consecration Hall and the civil and military officials finally heaved a sigh of relief. With Old Man Xiao here, there would definitely be no problem. Many people also looked at the Sky Amplification Palace Lord. The Sky Amplification Palace was also one of the top 7 sects in the world. It was known for its formations. With him taking action, it was indeed possible to pass through the Thunderblaze dynasty's formations and directly enter the imperial capital. However, in the next moment, 6 different colored spirit lights suddenly flashed in the sky. The terrifying throbbing caused the Heaven Origin Realm experts' expressions to change. A middle-aged man in a purple robe walked out of the spirit lights with an ancient aura. It was as if he had transmigrated from the ancient times. He smiled and said, "Old Man Xiao, long time no see. You're still alive." Old Master Qiao frowned and said, 6 Directions Spiritual Supremacy. Chapter 728. The 6 Direction Spirit Realm was one of the 4 Saint Spirit Realms, and this 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign was the current ruler of the Spirit Realm. He was also a Tongxian Realm expert. Old Man Xiao and the Shoddy Prince's hearts sank. These spirit cultivator sects had even invited a 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign. From the current battle strength, the Thunderfire dynasty was actually at an absolute disadvantage. It could be seen that they were extremely resentful towards the Thunderfire dynasty, and the Shoddy Prince also knew that it was impossible for them to be kind today. His eyes turned golden, and the origin energy around him shook. You can even invite the reclusive 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign out of seclusion. You guys are quite capable, but don't even think about threatening my Thunderfire dynasty. 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign said. Even now you're still so strong. This is also your Thunderfire dynasty's usual attitude towards spirit cultivator sections. You can't blame others for today's disaster. Leng Shiqi's eyes moved slightly. This matter was actually predicted by Lei Haoyan a year ago. The spirit cultivator sects would retaliate against the Thunderfire dynasty sooner or later, but no one expected it to come so early. And the timing was also very good. It was when the Thunderfire dynasty's throne was empty and power was scattered. Other than that, Crown Prince Lei Haoga was also assassinated by Leng Shiqi. So let alone the throne, there was not even a crown prince. If today's battle really turned into a river of blood, the Thunderfire dynasty would not gather their strength to fight against the enemy. Instead, there would be internal strife for the throne first. No one wanted to see such a situation. If Leng Shiqi could think of this, so could the Shoddy Prince and the others. But the Shoddy Prince was still so strong. From this, it seemed that the Thunderfire dynasty had indeed formed a strong stance against spirit cultivator sections. This was already imprinted in their bones. The only one who could see it clearly, Lei Haoran, was stripped of his status as a prince and imprisoned for life. At this time, the Palace Lord of the Yen Palace said, Lei Qingjue, the Heavenly Thunderfire Annihilation Formation of the Imperial Capital is a supreme-level formation. Unfortunately, the formation core, the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, has been sealed by your own people. I'm afraid that the spiritual energy inside will leak out. Now it will take time to remove the seal. This little bit of time is enough to make you die without a burial ground. Then he suddenly shouted, Formation! Immediately after, dozens of Sky Origin stage cultivators formed a complicated formation with 6 Directions Spiritual Sovereign as the center. In an instant, the weather changed, and the entire imperial city darkened. Specks of light intertwined to form a cage, completely trapping the imperial palace. Just the thought of using a Tongxian realm expert as the core of the formation and numerous Heaven's Origin realm experts as the formation flags was terrifying. Old Man Qiao immediately pointed at the void. Immediately, the space cracked and cracks spread out. However, 6 Directions Spirit Sovereign waved his hand, and the golden light from his primordial spirit soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, all the spatial cracks had been smoothed out. Old Man Qiao, I heard that you managed to enter the mystic comprehending realm by comprehending a sliver of the law of space with the help of an external object. However, the law of space was easily erased by me. Looks like the rumors are true. 6 Directions Spiritual Sovereign mocked. Old Master Qiao was expressionless and did not reply. He had already lost to 6 Directions Spiritual Supremacy in a probing exchange of blows just now. If they were to really fight, he would not have any advantage either. This way, the 30 or so Heavenly Yuan stage cultivators from the Spirit Cultivator sect would be able to unleash their anger without restraint. The imperial city would definitely be destroyed. Old Master Qiao hurriedly transmitted his voice to the shoddy prince. Let's listen to their conditions and stall for time. Quickly send someone to bring the heavenly Thunderfire Pearl and activate the heavenly Thunderfire Annihilation formation. The shoddy prince understood. He raised his head and looked at Six Directions' spiritual sovereign. Fighting to the death with the Thunderfire dynasty will not benefit you at all. Even if the dynasty declines or even perishes, before that happens, we will drag you down with us. Today this king admits defeat. Tell me your conditions. The moment these words were spoken, many of the ministers below were unwilling. If the Thunderfire dynasty gave in this time, there might be a next time. Furthermore, the Thunderfire dynasty could no longer suppress those spirit cultivator sects like they were doing now. However, they were suppressed by the aura of the heavenly Yuan stage cultivators to the point that they did not even dare to breathe loudly. No one dared to say a word. Six Directions' spiritual sovereign, and the rest laughed lightly. If you had said so earlier, there would have been no need to make things so tense. We only have one condition. Disband the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards, and we will retreat immediately. Impossible. The shoddy prince rejected immediately. The Discipline Commission intimidated all the spirit cultivator sects, and the Dark Lightning Guards were the strongest intelligence network of the Thunderfire dynasty. They were equivalent to the right-hand men of the Thunderfire dynasty. Disbanding the Discipline Commission and the Dark Lightning Guards was no different from cutting off one's own arms. Lei Qingjue, this sovereign is not discussing with you. Six Directions' spiritual sovereign shook his head and said, if you agree, we will retreat. If not, we will massacre the imperial capital. Suddenly, a coiling dragon spear appeared in the shoddy prince's hand. This was one of the rare level 8 earth weapons of the Thunderfire dynasty, the imperial might coiling dragon spear. Then let's try it. Elder Bu of the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect took out his spiritual sword and pointed it at the shoddy prince. Last time you stopped me. Let me see how powerful the Thunderfire dynasty's inherited cultivation technique is. The imperial might coiling dragon spear in the shoddy prince's hand roared furiously. Instantly the sky was dyed golden. Waves of power that looked down on the world descended, and a corner of the array that was set up in midair was torn apart by him. Elder Bu was surrounded by an illusory light. He pointed his spiritual sword, and the colored glaze illusion turned into a dreamland. At the same time, layers of arrays that were thousands of feet long flashed behind him. The origin energy of heaven and earth vibrated and turned into a 9 heavenly lotus. As the 2 heaven origin realm experts fought, Heavenly Master He Yin immediately set up a thick layer of black flames to protect everyone. Lung Shiqi observed the battle carefully. Judging from the movements, the shoddy prince and Elder Bu's cultivation was definitely stronger than the old man and Lin Yuanliang's. They were not just borrowing the origin energy of heaven and earth. They were also infusing their own understanding of the heavenly Tao. The shoddy prince shook his spear, and a dragon roared. A golden dragon jumped out. At the same time, a god of war holding a spear that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him. This was his cosmic form. Once a heaven origin realm expert used his cosmic form, it meant that he had used all his strength. As the spear stabbed out, the void trembled. Along with a huge wave, the 9-colored lotus was shattered. At the same time, the shadow of a giant bear appeared between heaven and earth. Sin Tiangong, the chief commander of the patrol guards, also made his move. Monarch Cloud Shuttle, the chief commander of the Discipline Commission, opened his mouth slightly. A strange fog instantly covered the entire palace. Even the senses of the heaven origin realm experts were suppressed by it. The rest of the experts from the Imperial Hall of Worship and the Spirit Cultivator sects also made their moves. One cosmic form after another appeared in the palace, and the origin energy of heaven and earth within hundreds of miles became violent. There was only one person who was an exception. He was the Deputy Pavilion Master of the Bloodrobe Pavilion, Black Frost Ghost. He hid his body directly. No one present could find him, including Old Man Qiao and Six Directions Spirit Elder. The power displayed in front of them was strong, but the Heaven Origin Realm assassin hiding in the dark was even more terrifying. This made the experts from the Imperial Hall of Worship feel even more pressure. This was the terrifying part of the Blood Robe Pavilion. At the same time, the weather in the Imperial capital was completely chaotic. Thunder, wind, and earthquake happened one after another. It was like the end of the world, and it made people tremble in fear. Especially when no one knew what was going on. This kind of unknown terror made people panic. Of course, the most chaotic place was inside the palace. There were dozens of Heaven Origin Realm experts confronting each other. It was a shocking scene, especially Old Man Xiao and Six Directions Spirit Elder. With them as the center, the space around them was constantly shattering. No one dared to get close to them. A shocking battle was about to happen. Chapter 729. The number of Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators on the Thunderfire Dynasty's side was much lesser than the Spirit Cultivator sects. Furthermore, the Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators could not be determined by numbers alone. Regardless of the realm, there was a difference in strength. The Thunderfire Dynasty's Imperial Hall of Worship sounded grand, but most of the people inside were recruited by the Thunderfire Dynasty. Some of them were rogue cultivators. Some had enmity with the Starfall Dynasty and Northernway Dynasty, and some were nurtured by the Thunderfire Dynasty themselves. For example, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, Monarch Cloud Shuttle, and the others were like that. When they left their positions as Dark Thunder Guards and Discipline Division's Great Commander, they would also enter the Imperial Hall of Worship. Therefore, the strength of the experts in the Imperial Hall of Worship was uneven. On the Spirit Cultivator sect's side, they were either sect masters, or grand elders. They enjoyed the highest status and resources of the top sects, so their strength definitely surpassed the Imperial Hall of Worship. In fact, the few Heavenly Origin Realm cultivators on the Thunderfire Dynasty's side already had thoughts of escaping. The reason why they were still here was because they were waiting for the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation. As long as the formation was activated, they would have a chance of winning. The Shoddy Prince shouted sternly. Even if you are very strong, you should be careful of losing a few teeth if you want to swallow us. All of you are the leaders of your sections. Once you die, what will happen to your sects? Maybe the people standing beside you will swallow your sections. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign said coldly, Lei Qingjue, don't try to sow discord. I know you are stalling for time. I will ask you one last time. Do you agree or not? The Shoddy Prince fell silent. His expression was extremely stiff. As a Heavenly Origin Realm cultivator, he felt so uncomfortable because Six Directions Spirit Sovereign and the others gave him too much pressure. Strictly speaking, his decision today would even affect the rise and fall of the Thunderfire Dynasty. Lung Shiqi was also guessing what decision the Shoddy Prince would make. Regardless of whether he agreed or not, it would be an extremely heavy blow to the Thunderfire Dynasty. At the same time, Lung Shiqi could not help but curse inwardly. The Thunderfire Dynasty actually did something stupid, like sealing the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl. They clearly knew that the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was the formation core of the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation. Wasn't the formation used to prevent accidents from happening? But now, the Thunderblaze Dynasty had fallen into such a huge disadvantage because they had not been able to activate the formation immediately. However, the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl was sealed, because the Thunderfire Dynasty's Imperial family was afraid of the Thunderfire Pearl's power leaking. The Heavenly Origin Realm, the Pearl, and the Heavenly Pearl, they had never stopped developing Heavenly Origin Pearl's Pearl, and the Heavenly Origin Realm Pearl were. In addition, the Imperial family had also made a guarantee that if an outsider obtained the Heavenly Thunderfire Pearl, they would not be able to use it. It was killing two birds with one stone. However, they did not expect that it was precisely because Lei Qingjun had allowed the Thunderfire Heavenly Bead to appear in Void Scar Sky that the people from the Spirit Cultivator sects had seen through it. This was also one of the reasons why so many experts had abandoned their previous enmity to find trouble with the Thunderfire Dynasty. The fact that the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation could not be activated directly was a huge flaw, which almost forced Prince Shuizhen into a desperate situation. In Lung Shiqi's view, today's matter could not possibly be settled peacefully. If the humble prince did not agree, there would be a great battle. Even cultivators at the sky origin stage would die, not to mention cultivators at the oneness of heaven and men stage or lower. If the emperor agreed, the Dark Thunder Guards and the masters of the discipline department would have to give up their lives. Otherwise, the spirit cultivator sect would not listen to the emperor's words. Leng Shiqi guessed that the emperor would agree first and delay further. However, this would be even more dangerous for Leng Shiqi. If the lives of the Dark Thunder Guards and the experts of the Discipline Commission were exchanged for the activation of the heaven-slaying Thunderfire Array, it was absolutely worth it. Leng Shiqi saw that the situation was not good, and quietly retreated to the back of the crowd. As long as there was a situation that was disadvantageous to him, he had to escape first even if he had to expose his strength. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Leng Shiqi, Lei Qingzhuo will definitely agree first. Later, 6 Directions Spiritual Elder will attack the higher-ups of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. That will be the time for you to make a great contribution. The owner of this voice was the Ink Frost ghostly man. Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He had already understood Ink Frost Ghostman's intention, and he nodded subtly. However, he did not put his life on the Ink Frost ghostly man. He quietly opened the system store interface and bought a mysterious item. Sure enough, just as Leng Shiqi and the Ink Frost ghostly man expected, the emperor's face darkened and he said stiffly, "I agree to your conditions. Disband the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards." Words are not proof. 6 Directions Spiritual Elder naturally would not believe the emperor so easily. Hand over the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guard's great commander, the 4 punishment envoys, the 4 chiefs, and the higher-ups. As for the distribution of the various states and counties, I will deal with it myself later. The emperor turned to look at Black Flame Heavenly Lord and Cloud Shuttle Sovereign. Their expressions also turned serious. 6 Directions Spiritual Elder's intention was very clear. He wanted their lives. Of course, they were not willing to give up their lives. No matter how loyal they were to the Thunderflame dynasty, their lives were still their own. As Sky Origin Realm cultivators, they could hold great power anywhere in the world. There was no need for them to die for the Thunderflame dynasty. The emperor's lips moved slightly. He was communicating with Black Flame Heavenly Lord and Cloud Shuttle Sovereign through telepathy. 6 Directions Spiritual Elder was getting impatient. He suddenly snapped his fingers. A bright green light suddenly appeared. The void froze and everything was destroyed. In the Imperial Hall of Worship, several Sky Origin Realm cultivators were hit by a heavy blow. Their blood splattered everywhere. Master Qiao was a little slower. It was too late for him to make a move. It was obvious that 6 Directions Spiritual Elder was indeed more powerful than Master Qiao. With just a snap of his fingers, 6 Directions Spiritual Elder was able to severely injure several Sky Origin Realm cultivators. If a fight really broke out, how many people would be left in the Imperial Hall of Worship? The Emperor made up his mind. Just as he was about to hand over a few people to buy some time, a man walked out from the crowd. It was Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi flew into the sky with 4 wings on his back. He laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, Sky Origin Realm cultivators and Tongxian Realm cultivators. How impressive! I am Lu Xingji, one of the 4 great managers of the Dark Thunder Guards. If you want my life, then come and take it. But even if I die, I will tear off a layer of your skin. Boom. Immediately after, Leng Shiqi transformed into Wild Demon Blood Beast body, an indestructible Vajra divine art. He held the 1000 illusion sword in front of his chest, as if he was facing death calmly. His actions instantly shocked everyone. This wasn't because of his strength, but because of his courage. At a time like this, there was still someone who dared to stand up for the Thunderflame dynasty against dozens of Sky Origin Realm cultivators. Among them, there was even a Tongxian Realm cultivator, 6 Directions Spiritual Elder, who could destroy the world. Furthermore, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only at the unity of heaven and man realm. This kind of cultivation was simply too weak in front of those cultivators. But he still stood up. Just this courage alone made the experts of the Imperial Hall of Worship feel ashamed of their inferiority. It also made many people from the spirit cultivator sect sigh that there were still talents in the Thunderflame dynasty. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame, Monarch Cloud Shuttle, the Emperor of Humble Governance, and Old Man Xiao all looked at Leng Shiqi with complicated expressions. The Emperor of Humble Governance clapped his hands and said, "Good, good, good. What a loyal and courageous man. As expected of an important official of the Thunderflame dynasty, as expected of one of the 4 great managers personally appointed by the late emperor. How can I hand over such a person? Even if we fight to the death today, my Thunderflame dynasty will accompany you to the end." Chapter 730. Leng Shiqi's actions were inconceivable to some people, but it also ignited the blood of a portion of the Thunderblaze dynasty's people, igniting their endless fighting spirit. Even Six Directions' spiritual sovereign could not help but take a second look at Leng Shiqi. In his eyes, Leng Shiqi was as weak as an ant, but his fearless courage moved Six Directions' spiritual sovereign. Being fearless is a good thing, but unfortunately, you did not recognize your own strength and the situation you are in. If you were a disciple of my Six Directions spiritual region, I would definitely nurture you well. What a pity, Six Directions spiritual sovereign said regretfully. Then he stretched out a finger, and a mysterious divine energy gathered. He was going to kill Leng Shiqi with his own hands. It was a great honor to have this Tongxian realm expert, the region lord of Six Directions spiritual region, personally kill someone in the unity of heaven and man realm. Fight! The humble prince suddenly shouted. He raised his dragon spear, and a divine dragon descended, wanting to save Leng Shiqi. Old Man Xiao was also about to make a move, but at that moment, a thick brilliance suddenly filled the sky above the 9 heavens. Waves of strange energy spread out, and all the heaven origin realm experts who were hovering in midair immediately felt the origin energy of heaven and earth sink. Then they fell to the ground one by one. The dozens of heaven origin realm experts from the imperial family's hall of worship and the spirit cultivator sect looked up at the sky at the same time, their eyes flashing with astonishment. The only thing that could stir up the origin energy of heaven and earth and force everyone to fall was the power of law, which was above the origin energy of heaven and earth. At that moment, they felt waves of gravity pressing down on them. The gravity was not very strong, but they could not even think about flying. Only a Tongxian realm expert could have this kind of power. In the imperial city, other than Old Man Xiao and Six Directions spiritual sovereign, there was a third Tongxian realm expert. Six Directions spiritual sovereign immediately stopped. He and Old Man Xiao frowned deeply. They did not notice that there was another Tongxian realm expert nearby. This mysterious Tongxian realm expert had suppressed dozens of heaven origin realm experts before he even appeared. The power he displayed was too shocking. They did not know what this mysterious expert's intention was, and which side would he stand on. If he stood on the side of the Thunderflame dynasty, today's disaster would be resolved. One more Tongxian realm cultivator was too much of a threat to the Sky Origin realm. It could be said that it was a dimensional attack. There was no suspense, so the Spirit Cultivator sect had no chance of winning. If this Tongxian realm cultivator stood on the side of the Spirit Cultivator sect, even if the Thunderflame dynasty activated the Thunderflame Heaven Punishing Array, it would be useless. That was what the humble prince was most worried about. Not long ago, they had speculated that the person who killed Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge was a powerhouse at the metaphysic-reaching realm who had cultivated the law of gravity. Now there was indeed such a person. From the looks of it, that mysterious expert had a grudge with the Thunderflame dynasty. The shoddy prince's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. As the saying goes, when it rains it pours. The Thunderfire dynasty was already exhausted from dealing with the counterattack of the Spirit Cultivator sect. On top of that, there was also a Tongxian realm expert who was coincidentally targeting them. The Thunderblaze dynasty was truly unlucky to have both sides working together. The shoddy prince was already considering whether to use the Thunderblaze dynasty's final trump card. As long as they used that trump card, they still had a chance of winning. However, once they used it, the Thunderblaze dynasty's thousands of years of accumulation would be used up by more than half. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign also wanted to know the purpose of this mysterious expert. He raised his head and said, I don't know when this Tongxian realm expert who cultivates the law of gravity appeared. Why don't you show yourself? Perhaps we have the same purpose today. Perhaps we can work together. Not really. A heavy voice rang out from above the clouds. The Thunderblaze dynasty's fate is not over yet. Your actions will not have any results. If you stop now, you will be less affected by karma. When this sentence was said, the people below had different reactions. The spirit cultivator sect instantly felt that something was wrong. From what they heard, this mysterious Tongxian realm expert seemed to want to help the Thunderblaze dynasty. If that was the case, they would miss the chance to join forces and force the Thunderblaze dynasty to submit. The shoddy prince and the others were like drowning people who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. However, they were also very confused. This mysterious expert had killed Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge, so he definitely had a grudge against the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, why was he standing on the Thunderblaze dynasty's side now? This was a really messy account. However, the shoddy prince would naturally not let go of such a good opportunity. He hurriedly said, Senior, if you help the Thunderblaze dynasty tide over this crisis today, you will definitely repay me generously in the future. Old Master Qiao also said, as long as you delay them a little, when the Thunderblaze Heaven Punishing formation is activated, these people will not be a threat. This time, it was the Six Directions Spirit Sovereign, and the others turned to be gloomy. They had already wasted a lot of time, and the Thunderblaze Heaven Punishing formation could be activated at any time. Once the formation was activated, even without the help of the mysterious expert, the Thunderblaze dynasty would be in an invincible position. At most, they could destroy the imperial capital. However, they could not damage the Thunderblaze dynasty's vitality. Perhaps some of them would be killed here. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign knew that the situation had completely reversed. They had become the anxious party, and with every passing moment, their lives would be in danger. He was unwilling to accept this. Who exactly are you? Why are you helping the evildoers? However, the mysterious expert only replied with one word, karma. Karma? What bullsh *t karma? Six Directions Spirit Sovereign suddenly shouted angrily without caring about his image. The four saint spiritual regions have been stagnant for tens of thousands of years because of the rumored karma. However, I do not believe in karma, nor do I believe in fate. I will lead the Six Directions spiritual region to break all karma. Everything in the world is predestined. Some things can't be forced. Let's stop. The arrow has already been knocked on the bow. Anyway, we have already come this far. I am also very interested in your strength. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign's body flashed with flowing light, causing the Heaven Origin stage cultivators to not dare to look directly at him. His battle intent reached the 9 heavens. Who else but him? The mysterious expert only said one word again. It's too late. Not good. The Sky Amplification Palace Master's expression changed. There is a terrifying force under the palace that is about to erupt. The Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation is about to be activated. Old Man Qiao flipped his hand, and a series of explosions could be heard in the air. Spatial cracks as thick as an arm actually severed the formation that the Heaven Origin stage cultivators had set up. The Sky Amplification Palace Master shouted, Spirit Sovereign, the situation is over. Let's take advantage of the fact that the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing formation has not been fully activated and leave quickly. Six Directions Spirit Sovereign hesitated. If not for the mysterious Tongxian stage cultivator appearing out of nowhere, he would have already killed all the higher-ups of the Discipline Commission and the Dark Thunder Guards. After that, he would cause the various powers to completely uproot their branches in every county. This way, his reputation would reach the peak. At that time, he would only need to wave his arm, and all the spirit cultivator sects in the world would definitely submit to him. He would be able to easily lead the various large sects and become a superpower that could surpass the Thunderfire dynasty. This was his true plan. However, all of this would be in the hands of this mysterious expert. He was filled with hatred and anger, but he also knew his own situation. If he did not retreat now, they would definitely suffer heavy losses. Instead, the reputation of the Six Directions spiritual region would fall to the freezing point, and he would no longer have a chance. A sharp killing intent flashed across Six Directions Spirit Sovereign's eyes. I don't care who you are. Since you keep talking about karma, then your appearance has also infected yourself with my karma. The next time we meet, you will die, and I will die. Finally, he looked at the shoddy prince. The Thunderfire dynasty has good fortune, but this is only the beginning. Let's go. Shortly after, Six Directions Spirit Sovereign waved his hand, and layers of divine light broke through the gravitational space. The 30-odd heaven origin stage cultivators that the spirit cultivator sects had joined together turned into streams of light and flew away. Chapter 731. Seeing this, the humble prince, Old Man Xiao, and all the other officials felt relieved. The unexpected disaster had ended in an inexplicable way, as if they were in a dream. The humble prince cupped his hands toward the sky and said politely, "May I know your name, Senior? Today you saved the Thunderflame dynasty from disaster. We will definitely repay your kindness." There were only 7 people in the mystic comprehending realm in the world. However, there was one more out of nowhere. The humble prince wanted to know who this person was. If the humble prince guessed correctly, this person might have killed Li Jueqing and Crown Prince Lei Haoge. There was no comparison between saving the Thunderflame dynasty and killing the 2 people. However, the humble prince was curious as to why a mystic comprehending realm cultivator would kill Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge. The voice came from the sky. "Everything is caused by karma. I'm just following the path of karma." In the end, the voice gradually disappeared as if it had gone far away. "Karma, it's karma again. Old Man Xiao, what's the karma he's talking about?" The humble prince was confused. Old Man Xiao looked at the sky as if he wanted to see through the world. He said faintly, "I'm not sure about the path of karma. It involves the origin of heaven and earth. What this person is looking for is much more profound than what I'm looking for. If I'm not mistaken, Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge were killed by this person. Those 2 people might be affected by some karma." Even Old Man Xiao could not explain it clearly. The humble prince was even more confused. Fortunately, the result was good. The situation just now was truly a matter of life and death, and the Thunderfire royal dynasty would have been consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi had stepped out and delayed for a few breaths of time. Afterward, that mysterious expert had appeared and intimidated the other experts. Only then was the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Formation ready, and they had finally forced Six Direction Spirit Supremacy to retreat. At the thought of this, the humble prince turned to look at Lung Shiqi. He did not hide the admiration and satisfaction in his eyes. Lung Shiqi, who was in the unity of heaven and man realm, dared to face so many heavenly origin realm masters and Six Direction spiritual sovereign, who was in the mystic comprehending realm. Not only did he show his fearless courage, but he also showed his absolute loyalty to the Thunderflame dynasty. If he didn't nurture such a talent and put him in an important position, he would be blind. The undemocratic king raised his voice and said, "Continue to activate the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation to prevent Lord Six Directions from attacking us. The rest of you, return to the main hall for a discussion." Buzz. A gigantic formation with a radius of 100 miles appeared. Instantly, red and purple colors filled the sky, enveloping the entire inner city of the imperial capital. This was the supreme formation that the Thunderflame dynasty was proud of, the Thunderflame Heaven Annihilating Formation. If the array was fully activated, it would be able to summon lightning and fire. Even a Sky Origin stage cultivator would not be able to withstand it for long. Seeing that the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Array was finally activated, the people in the hall who were still in shock finally calmed down. Especially those civil officials who had no cultivation base. They almost suffocated under the spiritual pressure of so many Sky Origin stage cultivators. If not for Empyrean Blackflame protecting them, these people would probably have long perished. The undemocratic king knew how dangerous the process was. He first comforted the people and said, "Those top sects actually joined hands to attack the imperial palace. No one expected that. Fortunately, the crisis is over. You can rest assured now. Moreover, the imperial capital has the protection of so many powerful cultivators from the imperial hall of worship and loyal officials like Lu Xingji. Just like what the mysterious ethereal stage cultivator said, the Thunderflame dynasty is very lucky. Speaking of this, he looked at Leng Shiqi and said, Lu Xingji, when Lord Six Directions forced me to hand over the Dark Thunder Guards and the higher-ups of the Discipline Commission, I did hesitate. However, your appearance made me determined to fight to the death with them. Even if I die, I will protect everyone's lives. Looking at the undemocratic king's excited expression, Leng Shiqi immediately said with a strong sense of righteousness, I will pledge my loyalty to the Thunderflame dynasty. I will pledge my loyalty to the Thunderflame dynasty. The other civil and military officials were all very excited. After going through such a great disaster, it was rare for them to be united. Lu Xingji, the late emperor, made an exception and chose you as the chief steward of the Dark Thunder Guards. You've made a great contribution this time. I won't mistreat you. The undemocratic king was full of praise for Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, was secretly laughing. In fact, he did not do anything. All he did was to say a few nice words. He did not make any great contribution. However, what he did showed the undemocratic king his loyalty. That was why the undemocratic king decided to put him in an important position. Of course, if it was someone else who rushed up like this, they might have been killed by Lord Six Directions with a slap. Leng Shiqi dared to rush up because he had his own trump card. His trump card was the mysterious ethereal stage cultivator. Leng Shiqi was not good at foresight. It was impossible for him to know that an ethereal stage cultivator was nearby and would help him. In fact, the so-called ethereal stage cultivator was actually Leng Shiqi himself. To be more precise, it was his soul double. Not long ago, when the Ink Frost Ghoul and Leng Shiqi were communicating through telepathy, he guessed that the Ink Frost Ghoul would secretly save him after he stepped up. That was how he would be treated now. However, Leng Shiqi would not hand his life over to the Ink Frost Ghoul. What if the Ink Frost Ghoul failed to save him? Therefore, an extremely crazy idea flashed through his mind. He immediately exchanged for a magical item from the system store. It was the soul double. The soul double was actually a duplicate of Leng Shiqi's soul. It was equivalent to having two souls, each of which was himself. The mysterious ethereal stage cultivator was actually Leng Shiqi in disguise. He had formed a godly soul when he broke through to the unity of heaven and man realm. Even without a physical body, he could survive in the outside world for a long time. He secretly released his soul double and used the law of earth to cover his aura. Then he used the law of gravity to intimidate the elites. That was how he was mistaken for an ethereal stage cultivator. The moment Leng Shiqi's soul double appeared, forcing the ethereal stage cultivators to fall to the ground was already the limit of what he could do. It seemed like a great deterrent, but in fact, it did not cause any harm to the elites. It was just that the ethereal stage cultivators subconsciously thought that it was an ethereal stage cultivator who attacked, so they were mentally defeated. Leng Shiqi's actions were naturally risky. If Six Directions Spirit Sovereign attacked him directly, he would be exposed. Therefore, he did not attack again after that. He even used the word karma to show that he was unfathomable, so that others would not dare to test him. As long as he could delay until the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation was activated, he would succeed. Fortunately, everything was going according to his plan, and the result was the best. Now, not only was Leng Shiqi placed in an important position, but he was also blamed for killing Li Jueqing and Lei Haoge. Therefore, he no longer had any worries. To be able to toy with two ethereal stage cultivators and dozens of ethereal stage cultivators in the palm of his hand, Leng Shiqi was bold and crazy enough to do it. Of course, all of this was based on the premise that he had comprehended the law of nature in advance. Otherwise, even if he had the system, it would be useless no matter how bold he was. The humble prince pondered for a moment, then said, Lu Xingji, you have not been one of the 4 chiefs for long, so you must not be in charge of many provinces. From now on, the 9 eastern counties of the Thunderfire dynasty are under your supervision, and I grant you the power of acting Grand Commander. Chapter 732. The emperor gave Leng Shiqi 2 rewards. The first was the right to supervise the 9 counties in the east of the Thunderblaze dynasty. In fact, this was the right that Leng Shiqi should have, but it was divided by the other 3 grand managers. The others didn't think much of it, but Grand Manager Hai and Grand Manager Shinta didn't have it easy. Before coming to the palace, they had each given Leng Shiqi a county. It was like cutting a piece of meat. Now they were going to spit out what they had swallowed earlier. As for the second reward, everyone was shocked. What did it mean to be the acting chief commander? Apparently, Lord Botched Governance was going to let Leng Shiqi be the chief commander of the Dark Thunder Guards. When Leng Shiqi's strength and experience were enough, Heavenly Venerable He Yin would probably give up his position. However, judging from Leng Shiqi's performance today, he did have the potential to become the Grand Commander, so no one said anything. "Thank you, Your Highness," Leng Shiqi said politely. "You deserve it." The emperor smiled, but his muscles were stiff when he smiled. He probably hadn't smiled for a long time. He continued, "Although we survived a crisis today, we also found many loopholes in the imperial capital's defense. We also know that the sects in the world are so powerful." The emperor's tone became more and more serious. This time, the sects gathered more than 30 Sky Origin Realm cultivators, but they didn't send all of their experts. For example, the mysterious 10,000 Laws sect had 9 Sky Origin Realm cultivators, the Blood-Robed Pavilion had 5, and the 6 Unity Spiritual Region had even more. If all the Sky Origin Realm cultivators from these top sects came, even the Thunderblaze Heaven-Slaying Array would be useless. Old Man Xiao also said, "There are so many top sects in the various counties of the dynasty. How did they team up within a year? Don't forget that there are great grudges between some of these sections. It's unbelievable for them to team up." "Old Man Xiao, you're saying that there's something behind their teamwork?" The emperor was enlightened. "That's right. So, the Thunderflame dynasty has to be vigilant." Emperor Zhuozhen's eyes flashed, and he immediately ordered, "Call back all the Sky Origin stage powerhouses outside. From now on, the heaven-destroying Thunderfire formation must be maintained by 4 Sky Origin stage powerhouses at all times. We can't let anyone sneak into the royal capital. Also, the restrictions on the Heavenly Thunderfire bead need to be changed as well. Otherwise, the Heavenly Thunderfire Annihilation formation will take too long to activate. This formation hasn't been used for over 1,000 years, so it can't be activated like today." Everyone deeply agreed with this point. If the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Array could be directly activated today, how could there be so many problems? Lastly, there is one more if, and that is to establish the Crown Prince. This matter could not wait any longer. There were many ordinary people in the huge Thunderblaze dynasty, and they were also the foundation of the dynasty. If no one ascends the throne, I'm afraid that the people's hearts won't be stable. Speaking of this, the humble prince glanced at the crowd. However, the problem was back to the original one. No one was suitable for the throne. Even if he wanted a puppet emperor, he had to at least look like one. At this moment, Leng Shiqi stepped forward and said, "Your Highness, I have a candidate in mind." "Let's hear it." Emperor Zhuozhen smiled when he saw someone speak, and it was Leng Shiqi. "I think there is a prince who can succeed the throne. This person is the eldest son of the late emperor, and he has countless outstanding military achievements. He is also in the unity of heaven and man realm. He is the eldest prince, Lei Haoyan." Leng Shiqi spoke out the candidate in his mind. When Lei Haoyan was mentioned, Emperor Zhuozhen frowned. A year ago, when Lei Qingjun passed away, Lei Haoyan had rashly broken into the palace. At that time, Emperor Zhuozhen personally removed Lei Haoyan's status as a prince and imprisoned him for life. However, now that Leng Shiqi recommended Lei Haoyan to succeed the throne, Emperor Zhuozhen was not happy about it. However, he still asked patiently, "Since Lord Lu recommended Lei Haoyan, you must have your own reasons." "Your Highness, I know that Lei Haoyan is a bit impulsive, but he has something that all the other princes don't have. It is something that an emperor needs," Leng Shiqi explained. "Oh, what is it?" Emperor Zhuozhen was not the only one who was curious. "It is foresight. Leng Shiqi said seriously, Your Highness and everyone else should still remember what Lei Haoyan said when he broke into the palace a year ago. Now that he mentioned it, everyone finally remembered that Lei Haoyan said that the Thunderflame dynasty was too aggressive towards the spirit cultivator sections. What the late emperor did before his death not only did not scare off the spirit cultivator sects, but it also aroused their hatred and anger, and even threatened the rise and fall of the Thunderflame dynasty. At that time, everyone present felt that Lei Haoyan was worrying for nothing, and they also felt that he was too young. However, wasn't everything that had happened today exactly as Lei Haoyan had predicted? It was just that Lei Haoyan did not expect the spirit cultivator sects to counterattack so quickly. It seemed that Lei Haoyan's unique foresight was indeed amazing. Just from this point alone, he did have the potential to be an emperor. But then again, Lei Haoyan was originally the candidate that everyone liked. Unfortunately, with the late emperor's will, who could make an exception and make Lei Haoyan the crown prince? Therefore, Emperor Zhuozhen fell into silence. He also knew that Leng Shiqi was right. Lei Haoyan's foresight could be said to be further than everyone else. However, rules were rules, and they could not be easily broken. Leng Shiqi continued. Your Highness, I know that the late emperor stripped Lei Haoyan of his right to succeed the throne when he was still on the throne. However, if Lei Haoyan was already the emperor of the Thunderflame dynasty, he would definitely have taken precautions against the revenge and attacks of the spirit cultivator sections. Even if what happened today happened again, he would not have let us be in such a sorry state, and let a Tongxian realm expert change our fate. I think that such an emperor is enough to break some of the so-called rules. Your Highness should know best which is more important. After a while, Emperor Zhuozhen nodded deeply and said, You are right. Lei Haoyan's foresight alone is worthy of the throne. I think that my brother's spirit in heaven will not blame me. After all, whether the Thunderflame dynasty has a good emperor or not is very important. The other officials looked at each other. They could see that Emperor Zhuozhen had made up his mind. They immediately shouted together, Your Highness is wise. It is really the fortune of the Thunderflame dynasty. Emperor Zhuozhen did not care about the flattery of everyone. He said to Leng Shiqi, This matter is settled. Lei Haoyan was recommended by you, so you will go and announce the decree on behalf of me. Your Highness, Your Highness. Leng Shiqi laughed in his heart. He had finally waited for this opportunity. A great opportunity was right in front of him. Chapter 733. The humble king asked Leng Shiqi to deliver the imperial edict, which was a great favor to Lei Haoyan. After all, Lei Haoyan was still under house arrest. Lei Haoyan would definitely remember who saved him and gave him the throne. If the future emperor remembered the favor, then it would be a big deal. Prince Ying's palace was the residence of the eldest prince, Lei Haoyan. However, Lei Haoyan was stripped of his position as Prince Ying after he came out of Skyscar. A year ago, he was even stripped of his status as a prince. From then on, he would be alone for the rest of his life. Prince Ying's palace used to be luxurious and majestic, but now it looked lonely and withered. Even the ground in front of the gate was covered with fallen leaves. It was obvious that no one had cleaned it for a long time. Now, there were only a few old servants left to take care of Lei Haoyan. Naturally, they could not take care of such a huge residence. At this moment, Lei Haoyan was sitting on the ground. His originally masculine and mighty figure was now dejected. His beard and hair were messy, and his eyes were cloudy. Empty wine jugs were scattered around him, and his body exuded a strong smell of alcohol. There was a stooped old eunuch standing next to Lei Haoyan. He looked worried, but he did not try to persuade him, because persuasion was useless. Drinking to drown his sorrows might not be a bad choice. Lei Haoyan was an expert at the unity of heaven and man level anyway. This little bit of alcohol would not hurt him. What made Lei Haoyan so dejected was his sadness. Not long ago, when the imperial capital was in turmoil, some color appeared in Lei Haoyan's eyes. However, he just sneered and continued to drink his wine. Cha-cha. Leng Shiqi walked on the path of Prince Ying's palace. He stepped on a thick layer of fallen leaves and came before Lei Haoyan. You are Lu Xingji, the old eunuch exclaimed. He knew that Lung Shiqi was now one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards, but what was he doing here at this time? The old eunuch suddenly thought of a possibility. He immediately shouted, "Don't even think about harming His Highness. His Highness has such a loyal servant by his side," Lung Shiqi lightly said. The old eunuch was only at the spirit transformation realm. Lung Shiqi could kill him with a single glance. Lei Haoyan glanced at Lung Shiqi, then took a big gulp of liquor and coughed several times. "It seems that my time is up." In his opinion, the Dark Thunder Guards had always dealt with some shameful matters. Lei Haoga was about to ascend the throne, and as the first prince, he definitely couldn't stay. The news of Lei Haoga's death was only known to the upper echelons of the Thunderfire dynasty. It had only been a day since Lei Haoga's death, so Lei Haoyan didn't know and thought that Lung Shiqi was here to kill him. Lung Shiqi shook his head. "Does your highness not want to live anymore?" This was not the majestic First Majesty from Void Scar Sky. "There's only hope as long as you're alive, isn't there?" Lei Haoyan's eyes shifted. "You weren't sent by Lei Haoga to kill me? Lei Haoga? He doesn't have the right to order me around. Oh, I almost forgot. There doesn't seem to be a Lei Haoga in this world anymore." Lung Shiqi slapped his forehead as if he just remembered this. Lei Haoyan suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with shock as if he had discovered something incredible. Lung Shiqi had called out Lei Haoga's name without any hint of respect in his tone. Normally, he should be addressing Lei Haoga as Crown Prince. That wasn't all. What did Lung Shiqi mean by the second half of his sentence? What did he mean by there was no Lei Haoga in this world anymore? Although Lei Haoyan already understood, he still couldn't believe what he had heard. He still asked, "What do you mean by that? How could the Crown Prince not be in this world anymore? If you're here to make fun of me, please leave." Did I not make myself clear enough? Also, I'm not so bored as to make fun of your highness. I just want to tell your highness to hurry up and tidy up. You can't be the Crown Prince like this. Otherwise, during the Ascension ceremony, not only will your highness lose face, but the Thunderflame dynasty will also lose face. With that, Lung Shiqi took out a golden imperial edict. The light from the edict made Lei Haoyan squint his eyes. By the will of the heavens, the Emperor decrees Crown Prince Lei Haoyan to enter the Eastern Palace and choose a day to ascend the throne. By the Emperor. Lei Haoyan was stunned. The old eunuch next to him was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. He even slapped himself twice. He thought he was dreaming. "Your Highness, no, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please accept the edict." Lung Shiqi handed the imperial edict forward. Lei Haoyan was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes burst out with a shocking light. He received the imperial edict with trembling hands. He carefully looked at the imperial jade seal imprint on it. Only then did he believe that everything was true. Lung Shiqi turned his eyes and said, "I have something to say to Your Highness the Crown Prince. Eunuch, please leave." The old eunuch immediately jumped and said with a face full of surprise, "This old servant will leave. This old servant will leave. Lord Lu, please go ahead." At this moment, Lei Haoyan was still carefully touching the imperial edict. This was something he had always dreamed of. He never dreamed that this thing that was not fated to him would fall into his hands in the end. He had experienced many ups and downs. His state of mind had also undergone drastic changes. At this moment he had gone from great sorrow to great joy. Little did he know that this was also the time when a person's state of mind was the weakest. Lung Shiqi's mind moved. 8 ghost slaves appeared. Suddenly, the surrounding aura was completely isolated. Lei Haoyan's eyes flashed, but he didn't care too much. He thought that Lung Shiqi really had something to say to him. Then another Lung Shiqi suddenly appeared beside Lung Shiqi. However, that Lung Shiqi was only the size of a 7 or 8-year-old child. That was Lung Shiqi's soul avatar. Lei Haoyan asked doubtfully, "Lu Xingji, if you have something to say, just say it. I will remember your favor." "Of course, a favor is not enough for me to give Your Highness the Crown Prince such a big gift," Lung Shiqi said with a smile, but there was a hint of sinister in his smile. Lei Haoyan was not too surprised. He did not have much contact with Lung Shiqi, but he had heard that he was a greedy person. "What do you want?" "I want you." As soon as Lung Shiqi finished speaking, 6 mysterious vortexes appeared behind him. Each vortex flickered with a multicolored light. In an instant, Lei Haoyan's eyes lost their luster, and his consciousness had already been dragged into the glass samsara realm. He would go through 6 rounds of reincarnation in a row. Every time he went through a round of reincarnation, a part of his consciousness would be wiped out. This was an illusion created by Leng Shiqi when he visualized the 6 paths of reincarnation in the underworld. It was the glazed reincarnation mirror, a rank 7 spiritual skill, dream glazed glass, and his comprehension of the 1,000 revolutions fantasy world. Not to mention that Lei Haoyan's state of mind was fluctuating greatly and had long been unstable. Even if he was in a normal state, he would not be able to last more than a few rounds. His consciousness would eventually disappear completely, leaving only a shell. Perhaps only a spirit caster who had condensed a primordial spirit could survive 6 rounds of reincarnation. But even so, after experiencing 6 rounds of reincarnation, would you still remember who you were? These 6 rounds of reincarnation might take decades or centuries for a reincarnator, but in reality, it was only a matter of a few breaths of time. So even if he made it through, he would be muddle-headed and at the mercy of others. This was the terrifying part of the glass samsara realm. And the reason why Leng Shiqi wanted to wipe out Lei Haoyan's consciousness was because of his body. It could also be said that he had taken a fancy to his identity. The Crown Prince's identity. Chapter 734. Leng Shiqi's soul doppelganger was not only used to scare people, but it also had a more important use, which was to possess someone. When he attacked the 1,000 Illusion Sword sect, he saw the 1,000 Illusion Sword Elder possess Wei Qian's body, which was a reminder to him. After obtaining the soul doppelganger and scaring off 6 Directions Spiritual Elder and the others, he had his own plans. He wanted to use the soul doppelganger to possess a prince. From there, he could indirectly sit on the throne of the Thunderstorm dynasty. However, this goal was not so easy to achieve. First of all, he could not be disturbed during the possession process, let alone be discovered. Especially since Leng Shiqi had never possessed anyone before, it might take a long time. Therefore, the prince that he wanted to possess could not have any experts protecting him. Among the many princes, Lei Haoyan was the most pitiful. He was stripped of his status as a prince, and there were only a few old servants in Prince Ying's residence. Lei Haoyan naturally became Leng Shiqi's best target. Other than that, he also had his eyes on Lei Haoyan's powerful cultivation, physical body, and purple crystal frost flame. If he possessed Lei Haoran or Lei Haoyun, he might succeed and sit on the throne. However, Leng Shiqi, who was used to controlling power, naturally hoped that his soul doppelganger would not be too weak. There was another difficulty in possession. When he killed Lei Haoga, he found that Lei Haoga, as the crown prince, already had a treasure to protect him. If not for Leng Shiqi's comprehension of the law of gravity, he might not have been able to kill Lei Haoga. Therefore, Leng Shiqi had to possess a prince before he became the crown prince. In this way, Lei Haoyan was the most suitable candidate. A year ago, Lei Haoyan had predicted that the spirit cultivator sect would take revenge, which could be considered as helping Leng Shiqi. At this moment, Lei Haoyan's consciousness had been hooked into the glass reincarnation realm by Leng Shiqi. In his first life, he was born as a little beggar, suffering all kinds of humiliation and suffering. His most common sentence was, "I'm the crown prince, I'm the emperor." However, what he received was endless mockery and bullying. When he was in his teens, he starved to death on the streets. Before he died, he still said, "I am the crown prince, I am the emperor." The second life was even worse. Lei Haoyan was reincarnated as a stray dog. He froze to death by the roadside after living for less than 2 years. His eyes were filled with confusion. In his third life, he was finally born into a normal family. At first, he could still vaguely remember who he was. But as time passed, he slowly grew up, got married, had children, raised children, and finally died of old age. It was a peaceful and happy life. When he breathed his last, he had completely forgotten that he was once the first prince of the Thunderflame dynasty. He had also forgotten that he was about to become the crown prince, and even the emperor. Lei Haoyan closed his eyes and lost consciousness. He lost consciousness forever. In the outside world, only 3 breaths of time had passed. Lung Shiqi gently waved his hand and retracted the glass samsara mirror. To be able to last for 3 lifetimes is not bad. Then he looked at Lei Haoyan's body. This was a body without a soul and consciousness. With a thought, Lung Shiqi's soul avatar immediately entered Lei Haoyan's body. It immediately broke into his spiritual space and smoothly took over his body. The process was smoother than he imagined. When Lei Haoyan opened his eyes again, he saw a familiar man in a black and red official's uniform. It was Lung Shiqi. Lei Haoyan and Lung Shiqi looked at each other and smiled. This feeling is a bit strange. Lung Shiqi and the soul avatar were both his own consciousness. Just like how his left and right hands were not divided into primary and secondary, they would not affect each other. Now that the soul avatar had its own body, if Lung Shiqi's main body died, he could use the soul avatar's consciousness to continue living. It could be considered an extra life. Lung Shiqi said, "Everything is done. Next, we just have to wait for the coronation. I will go and collect information on Lei Haoyan's daily habits to avoid exposing any flaws." "That's good. You and I are connected. As long as I see the information, I will know. And even if I have some unusual behavior, it's not a big problem. After all, Lei Haoyan has gone through a few ups and downs. It's normal for him to have some changes. Alright, since we are connected, there's no need to say anything more. It's a bit weird to talk to yourself." Lung Shiqi did not say this out loud, but in his heart. Lei Haoyan, who was standing opposite him, shrugged. "Isn't it because you wanted to try?" After that, Lung Shiqi turned around and returned to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. The old eunuch immediately took his soul doppelganger to bathe and change his clothes. Not long after, Prince Ying's palace welcomed over 1,000 guards and servants. In just a day's time, Prince Ying's palace was cleaned up. At the same time, the news that Lei Haoyan was conferred the title of Crown Prince was released. It was also announced that he would ascend the throne next month. The imperial capital immediately became lively again. The Crown Prince was clearly Lei Haoga, and he was about to ascend the throne. Why was there a sudden change? However, the Thunderfire dynasty did not disclose the details of Lei Haoga's assassination to the public, so everyone could only guess blindly. However, this did not stop the officials and nobles from flocking to Prince Ying's palace to congratulate Lei Haoyan. The Prince Ying's palace, which was still desolate yesterday, suddenly became the most lively place in the imperial capital. It was a kind of irony. Unfortunately, none of them could see Lei Haoyan, because he announced to the public that he was not feeling well and needed to rest for a few days. He would not see anyone. Others thought about it and agreed. Lei Haoyan was originally a useless prince. Once the new emperor ascended the throne, he might be eliminated. From such a precarious situation, he suddenly became the crown prince, and was even preparing to ascend the throne. It was not easy for anyone to recover, so it was normal for him to adjust his mentality. In fact, this was just the soul avatar adapting to this body. Not only did he need to learn Lei Haoyan's habits, speech and movements, he also needed to adapt to Lei Haoyan's own strength. Lei Haoyan had the cultivation of one with the world, and he had also refined the purple crystal frost flame. He needed time to regain control of these things. The soul avatar also went into seclusion for a few days. There was a pleasant surprise. Lei Haoyan's cultivation technique was extraordinary. He cultivated the Thunderfire dynasty's Yang technique, which only the direct descendants of the Thunderfire dynasty's royal family had the qualifications to come into contact with. This technique was comprehended by the Thunderfire dynasty's ancestors from the Thunderfire Heavenly Pearl, and it was abnormally fierce. Especially if one could refine the fire or lightning variants, its power would be multiplied. In terms of rank, it could be called a 9th-tier cultivation technique. Lei Haoyan had already cultivated the Thunderfire Yang technique to the 7th layer, and he was only one step away from the 8th layer, which was the Heaven Origin realm. This technique had developed lightning and fire to the extreme. It just so happened that Lung Shiqi lacked a powerful fire attribute cultivation technique, and his use of the Crimson Gold Earth Dragon Flame was still superficial, which could make up for it. No one would have thought that the Thunderfire dynasty's crown prince, the future emperor, was actually Lung Shiqi. Chapter 735. When Lung Shiqi returned to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards, everyone looked at him differently. Today, Lung Shiqi could be regarded as the favorite of the king of poor governance. He not only had the right to supervise the 9 provinces, but also had the right to be the acting commander. In the past, when the commander was absent, the 4 directors took turns to take charge of the affairs. But now it was different. As long as the commander was absent, Lung Shiqi would be in charge of the Dark Thunder Guards. It was known that the commander, Lord Black Flame, was not in the imperial capital most of the time. This meant that Lung Shiqi had unknowingly become half a commander. Lung Shiqi had reached such a high position in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards not long after he came. How could the Dark Thunder Guards not be shocked? Now in the Dark Thunder Guards, anyone who saw Lung Shiqi still felt a little incredible. Some seniors still found it hard to accept, thinking that Lung Shiqi was not worthy of his position. There were also some young people whose eyes were full of worship and admiration. Lung Shiqi had become their goal and role model, and they couldn't wait to join him immediately. On this day, there were more than 60 people sitting in the conference hall of Xingji Pavilion. What was terrible was that 70% of them were masters in the realm of oneness of heaven and men. There were 9 people sitting in the front. They were the 9 deputy directors who belonged to Lung Shiqi. Ringyi was sitting in the first row. The rest were all supervisors, who were in the early stage of oneness of heaven and men, and in the late stage of Gang Spirit Realm. Generally speaking, those who could become supervisors in Gang Spirit Realm were all young people who needed to be trained by the Dark Thunder Guards. After Lung Shiqi came in, everyone said in unison, "Greetings, General Director." He glanced at the crowd and found something very interesting. 30 to 40% of the masters present were old men with white hair and beard. It seems that this is a place for them to retire. He thought to himself, but he was still very kind on the surface. Don't be so polite. I never like any red tape. Everyone here only needs to abide by one rule, and that is absolute obedience to me. At this point, the 1000 Illusion Dao sword appeared in Lung Shiqi's hand and then disappeared. Instantly, sword threads as thin as hair intertwined and formed a sword formation above everyone's heads. This was something that Lung Shiqi imitated from the 1000 Illusion Swordmaster's battle. Later on, he cultivated the 1000 Illusion Sword Codex, and had the 1000 Illusion Dao sword in his hand. He could also use the sword silk formation like the 1000 Illusion Swordmaster. Of course, in terms of power, he could not compare to the 1000 Illusionary Swordmaster. After all, the 1000 Illusionary Swordmaster possessed Wei Qiyan, and was at his peak. However, it wasn't a problem to use it to intimidate these Unity of Heaven realms. The sitting masters immediately felt as if their backs were pierced by the sword Qi. The spiritual power contained in the sword Qi made these Oneness of Heaven and Men realm experts tremble. Some inner supervisor of Gang Spirit Realm were so scared that they broke out in cold sweat. Everyone was secretly sweating in their hearts. As the saying goes, a new broom sweeps clean. Even though this was the first time Chief Steward Liu had gathered the upper echelons of the 9 provinces, it seemed that he wanted to establish his authority. This was within everyone's expectations. However, what was unexpected was the power displayed by Lung Shiqi. At that moment, someone familiar with him secretly transmitted a message. Didn't Lord Liu just break through to the oneness of heaven and men realm not long ago? Why is he so powerful? Didn't you notice that he is already in the middle stage of the oneness of heaven and men realm? He should have broken through from the Gang Spirit Realm to the middle stage of the oneness of heaven and men realm. It can be seen that his power is incredible. This is just his cultivation. What makes me more amazed is his power. This sword formation doesn't seem very complicated, but condensing the sword into threads can only be done by sword cultivators in the oneness of heaven and men realm. In addition, he has the 8th level earth weapon, the 1000 Illusion Dao sword in his hand. Just based on this, I'm afraid that he is not weaker than the other 3 chief stewards. His progress is too amazing. He has reached this level in only about 3 years. If he is given a few more decades, what kind of realm will he reach? That's why I said that you should put away your little thoughts and follow this master well. In the future, you will be able to achieve great success with just a little bit of light. Leng Shiqi saw that everyone's expressions were different and knew that they were secretly transmitting a message. He said, I don't have any other meaning. I only have one sentence. Since you are following me, you have to do things according to the way of Xingji Pavilion. I will not care about your little calculations. As long as you do your part well, I will not treat you unfairly. Everyone understood that Leng Shiqi's hand was giving a sweet date after a slap. They said together, this subordinate obeys. All right, let's all do our own things. There is one thing to pay attention to, and that is to keep an eye on those spirit cultivator sects at all times, especially the top sects. Leng Shiqi finally reminded them. Those top sects had failed to attack the palace this time. They would not give up so easily, so they had to keep a close eye on them. Following that, Leng Shiqi dismissed everyone. He was preparing to take care of some matters. After all, during his closed-door cultivation, he had accumulated some information that he needed to look through personally. But right at that moment, the Ink Frost Ghost Man's voice sounded out again. Midnight, east of the imperial capital. The Ink Frost Ghost Man's voice only said a few words before disappearing. Leng Shiqi opened his supercilious eye, and all the spirit energy within 100 li of him could be seen clearly. After breaking through to the unity of heaven and man realm and condensing his soul, his supercilious eye's range of observation had reached 100 li. However, he still did not see the Ink Frost Ghost Man's chi. This meant that the Ink Frost Ghost Man was not in the imperial capital. He did not know what method he used to transmit his voice to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi's finger lightly tapped on the handle. The Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Array had just been closed, and the Ink Frost Ghost Man dared to transmit his voice. Was he not afraid of being detected by the imperial capital's array formation? It had to be said that the Ink Frost Ghost Man's concealment technique was superb, and he was very bold. Since the Ink Frost Ghost Man had taken the risk to stay near the imperial capital, it meant that he had something important to discuss with Leng Shiqi. He guessed that the Ink Frost Ghost Man wanted him to do something for the Blood Garment Pavilion. Then he left an illusion in his secret room, and quietly left the imperial capital. Now he was no longer the small fry that the Blood Garment Pavilion could manipulate. Even if he had to face the Vice Pavilion Master of the Blood Garment Pavilion alone, he had enough confidence. Late at night, Leng Shiqi arrived at the agreed meeting place alone. However, what he saw was not the Ink Frost Ghost Man, but a human-shaped puppet. The puppet spoke in human language, and its voice was very mechanical and stiff. Leng Shiqi, in order to not be detected by the array formation near the imperial capital, I have attached a portion of my spiritual energy to this puppet. Leng Shiqi understood that the Ink Frost Ghost Man had used such a method. With that, he was even more fearless. What instructions does the Vice Pavilion Master have for this disciple? The Ink Frost Ghost Man's words caused Leng Shiqi to listen attentively. The Ink Frost Ghost Man said, "It's time to let you know the real Blood Seed plan." Chapter 736. The Real Blood Seed Plan. Leng Shiqi had guessed correctly. The Blood Seed Plan did not only consist of him, Delta Orgi Yushu and Ming Ming. He had always wanted to know how many secrets were hidden in this plan, and what was its ultimate goal. The puppet possessed by the Ink Frost Ghostly Man said with a piercing voice, "The Blood Seed Plan had actually started 100 years ago. There were some outstanding disciples who were placed in other forces. The sects secretly helped them to climb up the ranks in an attempt to return the favor to the sections. However, it was not easy to become a core member of a force. Ordinary talents could only reach the middle level at most. However, relying on the power of the middle level could not bring about great benefits to the Blood Garment Pavilion. The Blood Seed Plan had reached a bottleneck because of this until the Pavilion Master decided to nurture a true prodigy. Therefore there was the Blood Mist Island, and the four of you." Leng Shiqi understood the origin of the Blood Seed Plan. The plan had been started a long time ago. There were probably many people from the Blood Garment Pavilion in the imperial capital now. However, he still could not guess the purpose of the Blood Seed Plan. What was the so-called breaking the shackles of the Blood Garment Pavilion? The Ink Frost ghostly man continued. The Blood Seed plan has been going on for more than 100 years. We thought it would continue for another 100 years before it could succeed. However, your improvement is amazing. In just a few years, you have become one of the 4 chiefs of the Dark Thunder Guards. Now you are valued by the Emperor and hold great power. Now you are qualified to know the true purpose of the Blood Seed plan. When he heard up to here, Lung Shiqi held his breath in concentration. For the sake of this objective, he'd experienced countless storms of blood on Bloodmist Island, and he'd even lost his past memories and experiences. After killing his way out of the Blood Mist Island, he had not stopped for a moment. He had been running around and almost lost his life several times. It was not easy for him to obtain the qualification to know the truth. The Blood Garment Pavilion is one of the top 7 sects in the world. It is one of the top sects and is one of the top sections. The assassins under the Blood Garment Pavilion are feared by countless spirit cultivators. It can be said that they have gained both fame and fortune. However, we are not satisfied with this. The Ink Frost ghostly man's tone suddenly became sharp, revealing boundless ambition. If others had heard this, they would have thought that the Blood Garment Pavilion's higher-ups had lost their minds. The Blood-Robed Pavilion was already a top-notch sect. It had several Sky Origin stage cultivators under its command. The 9 Netherworld Blood-Robed assassins were famous all over the world. Many powerful cultivators had been killed by them. This was already a height that countless people could only dream of. Even if they could reach a fraction of the Blood Garment Pavilion's level, it would be enough for them to smile in the underworld. However, the Blood Garment Pavilion was far from satisfied with this. Wasn't this just looking for trouble for himself? At first, Lung Shiqi also had this idea, but it was just a fleeting thought. The more accomplished a person was, the less satisfied they would be with their current achievements. Lung Shiqi was the same. Logically speaking, he could be considered to have great authority now. He oversaw the 9 eastern counties of the Thunderblaze dynasty, and had dozens of Union of Heaven experts under him. He was already a great figure that could cause a commotion with a stomp of his feet. However, Lung Shiqi was never satisfied with the status quo. He was not willing to sit in the position of one of the 4 great chiefs for the rest of his life. Of course, he wanted to continue to climb up and become the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, or even obtain higher authority. In this respect, Lung Shiqi could understand the Blood Garment Pavilion's ambition. Seeing Lung Shiqi's approval, Ink Frost Ghost Man continued. The Blood Garment Pavilion's strength is not bad, but in fact, it is controlled by others. You haven't been in the sect for long, so you may not have felt it. The feeling of being tied down is enough to drive people crazy. In the eyes of other sects, no matter how strong the Blood Garment Pavilion is, it is just a sword in their hands. They will use it when they need it and abandon it when they don't need it. Those people are afraid of the Blood Garment Pavilion's assassins, but at the same time, they look down on them. After thousands of years of inheritance, the Blood Garment Pavilion has had enough. Therefore, we resolutely decided to change this situation. The Blood Seed plan is to send talented disciples like you into the major forces. When you all succeed in rising to the top, you can secretly bring a lot of resources and benefits to the Blood Garment Pavilion. Most importantly, when the Blood Garment Pavilion rises in the future, it will inevitably be besieged by a large number of sections. At that time, it will be time for you to really show your strength. Lung Shiqi grasped the key point. Rise. What was the Blood Garment Pavilion going to do that it would be besieged by so many sects? In the original plan, we planned to announce to the world in a few decades that the Blood Garment Pavilion will no longer be hidden in the dark, and will no longer be a sword in the hands of others. The Blood Garment Pavilion will still be an assassin force, but it will be up to us to decide what kind of assassination missions we accept or not. More importantly, the disciples of the Blood Garment Pavilion, like the disciples of other sects, can go out to gain experience and compete for opportunities. However, in the past thousands of years, the Blood Garment Pavilion has been shouldering too many grievances. Among the sects in the world, from the top sects to the third-rate forces, almost all of their disciples have been killed by the assassins of the Blood Garment Pavilion. The reason why they have not directly retaliated against us is that, first, they are afraid of our strength. Second, everyone tacitly agrees that the Blood Garment Pavilion will not bear grievances. Otherwise, if they lose this sword, it will be difficult for them to do some things. Even so, in recent years, many people have secretly come to the Blood Garment Pavilion to cause trouble. You should have experienced it. Lung Shiqi nodded. When he was still in the spirit transformation realm, he had bumped into the Tang family at the Donglin County branch. The elder of the Tang family had almost killed him. It turned out that this kind of thing was not rare. So once the sects rise, those forces who resent us will definitely join forces to destroy the Blood Garment Pavilion. In their eyes, since the Blood Garment Pavilion is no longer willing to be the sword, they will change it. When that time comes, the strength of the sects will definitely not be enough to resist them. We will need your strength. The Ink Frost Ghost Man finally revealed the purpose of the Blood Garment Pavilion. Lung Shiqi understood. He knew that the Blood Garment Pavilion would face a disaster in the future, and this disaster was brought on by their own initiative. Of course, the Blood Garment Pavilion would not seek their own destruction, so they came up with the Blood Seed Plan. When these people became the upper echelons of those forces, they would have a lot of power, which would greatly reduce the pressure that the Blood Garment Pavilion had to bear. If a top sect like the Blood Garment Pavilion could not bear it, then it would be fine to add a few more. For example, Lung Shiqi. If he was already the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards when the Blood Garment Pavilion rose, he could have prevented most of the sects in the 9 eastern counties from going against the Blood Garment Pavilion. He alone could have greatly reduced the pressure on the Blood Garment Pavilion. In addition, the Discipline Commission where Delta Origi was, the Ultimate Saber Hall where Yushu was, and the Purgatory Demon Sect where Meng Ming was, as well as the people who had participated in the Blood Seed Plan in the past, there would not be many sects that could go against the Blood Garment Pavilion in the end. Under such circumstances, if the Blood Garment Pavilion was still destroyed, it would be purely because of their own lack of ability, and they could not blame anyone else. However, if the Blood Garment Pavilion really passed this stage, it could be said that they had achieved their goal, and could finally establish themselves in the world. Without this layer of shackles, the Blood Garment Pavilion would become more prosperous and powerful. Lung Shiqi had to admit that this was an extremely huge plan that would take hundreds of years, the efforts of several generations, and extremely strong patience to successfully complete. He also had to admire the strategy and determination of the Blood Garment Pavilion's upper echelons. Chapter 737. However, Lung Shiqi had a major doubt. Would the people who participated in the Blood Seed project still listen to the Blood Cloak Pavilion after they became the higher-ups of a force? Lung Shiqi was now one of the 4 great general managers. But he was no longer in awe of the Blood-Robed Pavilion. Now that he had become the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards or reached the Sky Origin stage, his awe of the Blood-Robed Pavilion had disappeared. When the Blood Cloak Pavilion asked him for help, he might not help them. He did not believe that the Blood Cloak Pavilion had not thought of this. They had planned for such a long time, and such an important plan. They could not afford any accidents at the core. It meant that the Blood Cloak Pavilion must have their own backup plan. For example, they might have done something to Lung Shiqi and the others. Lung Shiqi muttered in his heart and said, "I understand. What do you need me to do?" Tonight, the Ink Frost Ghostly Man did not come to him just to chat. The Ink Frost Ghostly Man smiled and said, "There is indeed something I need you to do. In fact, the Blood Cloak Pavilion has been trying to change in recent years. We participated in Lei Qingjuan's birthday banquet, and this time, to let the other sects begin to adapt to the Blood Cloak Pavilion standing in front of others. You are already the great manager who oversees the 9 eastern counties, so we are going to let the Blood Cloak Pavilion branch in the 9 eastern counties try to change the rules of accepting missions. This will definitely cause dissatisfaction among the local sections. Maybe they will make a big deal out of it. When that happens, you will have to step in." I see. Lung Shiqi's mind raced. It seemed that the Blood-Robed Pavilion wanted to use the 9 eastern counties under his control as a test subject. This matter was actually not a big deal. As long as it did not cause public outrage, He could suppress it with his status. However, he still said, "This is a bit troublesome. Deputy Pavilion Master, you know that I have not been in office for long. I have just taken over the supervision of the 9 eastern counties. The deputy managers and eunuchs under me have not been completely subdued, let alone the inspectors and supervisors of the various counties. To put it bluntly, my authority is far from enough. It is better to start this after some time. Moreover, we cannot let several counties do this at the same time. Otherwise, there is nothing I can do if there is an accident." The ink frost ghostly being chuckled. "Don't worry, since we've already waited for so long, there's no need to rush. What I just said will be carried out over the next few years, so it won't make things difficult for you. Moreover, the sect won't let you work for free. I know that with your current status, you don't lack ordinary resources. I think this is what you need." At this moment, the puppet possessed by the ink frost specter pulled out a piece of its own structure and handed it over. "This is?" Lung Shiqi asked. "It is a jade slip, but there are some restrictive spells on it. Later, I will tell you the spell to remove the restrictive spells. Inside the jade slip, there are all the experiences we had when we reached the Sky Origin stage." Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. The experience of breaking through to the Sky Origin stage. This was something that no amount of resources or treasures could exchange for. How many people in the union of heaven and man realm wanted to advance further, but had no one to guide them? Only top-notch sects had these things. Even in top-notch sects, not everyone could get their hands on them. In the Blood Cloak Pavilion, perhaps only the 9 Hades Blood Cloak assassins were qualified. These are only our experiences. They might not be suitable for you, but you can use them as a reference. After you memorize them, destroy the jade slip. Do not spread it out. In addition, you and the Delta Origi are both in the imperial capital. Xiongming is also in Tianshun County. They are under your supervision. It's best if you can help, the ink frost ghostly being advised. "Don't worry, Vice Pavilion Master. I understand." Even if the ink frost ghostly being did not say so, Lung Shiqi would have done it anyway. It's about time. The Bloodseed project will only begin in a few decades. There's no need for you to rush. You just need to steadily become the Dark Thunder Guard's commander. With that, the puppet in front of Lung Shiqi suddenly disintegrated and exploded into a pile of debris. Lung Shiqi gently waved his hand and crushed the debris into dust. Only then did he feel relieved and leave. In the following month, the imperial capital could be said to be filled with undercurrents. The sudden activation of the Thunderfire Heaven Punishing Formation and the series of shocking changes yesterday made many people realize that something was wrong. However, the Thunderfire dynasty announced that they were improving the formation. Of course, not many people believed it. At the same time, Lei Haoyan became the crown prince and was about to ascend the throne. The various major forces of the Thunderfire dynasty were undergoing a preliminary reshuffle under the orders of the Shoddy Prince. For example, some of the older members of the Dark Thunder Guard had retired, leaving many positions empty. These positions were left for Lei Haoyan to appoint, so they naturally became Lei Haoyan's subordinates. The situation was similar for the patrol guards and the discipline commission. Even the officials who were qualified to take up positions and the upper echelons of the various provinces were transferred. All of this was to prepare for Lei Haoyan's ascension to the throne. There were also many people who took a fancy to the empty positions and fought for them with all their might. During this process, Lung Shiqi was the one who suffered a bit. Because he had many senior subordinates, 30% of the positions were suddenly empty. However, he didn't care. These empty positions would only be filled by stronger people in the future. After all, no one in this world was closer to the emperor than him. Lei Haoyan, or rather, the Lei Haoyan who was possessed by Lung Shiqi's soul avatar, was very busy during this period. He had already started to get in touch with the affairs of the Thunderfire dynasty. Every day he was full of social activities. The Shoddy Prince was paving the way for him, but he still had to walk the path himself. It was very important to know the right people. At this time, Lung Shiqi's soul avatar sent off the last visitor of the night. The Shoddy Prince then sent someone to invite him into the palace. Soon, Lei Haoyan arrived at the palace. The shoddy prince said seriously, Haoyan, you will ascend the throne the day after tomorrow. There are some things I need to tell you personally. Come with me. Then, the soul avatar followed the shoddy prince through layers of formations, and came to a room full of thunderfire energy. There was nothing else in the room except for a stone table in the center. There were a few items placed on it. The soul avatar immediately saw that the thunderfire heavenly bead was one of them. He thought to himself, this must be the place where the most important trump card of the thunderfire dynasty is kept. The shoddy prince walked to the front of the table and said, Haoyan, you have experienced a lot in the past 2 years. These might not be trials for you, but opportunities to train your will and state of mind. I have noticed that you are much more mature than before. You are definitely qualified to sit on the dragon throne. I am very pleased. Uncle. The soul avatar was about to speak, but was interrupted by the shoddy prince. I know what you are thinking. After you ascend the throne, I will go into seclusion in the dragon vein. The Thunderfire dynasty will be under your control. However, you still need 2 royal family members to assist you for a period of time. Today, I called you here to tell you the biggest secret of the Thunderfire dynasty. Chapter 738. The Soul Clone's heart skipped a beat. The shoddy prince was going to tell him all the secrets and trump cards of the Thunderblaze dynasty. The shoddy prince picked up the heavenly Thunderblaze pearl first. You should be familiar with this item. However, there are still some restrictions on the heavenly Thunderblaze pearl. I have decided to remove some of them. At least, the heavenly Thunderblaze array can be activated at any time. You have to do this personally after you ascend to the throne. At that time, you will be the only one in the world who knows how to remove the restrictions on the heavenly Thunderblaze pearl. This is the first thing you have to do after you ascend to the throne. Remember to delay it. The soul clone nodded. It seemed that the shoddy prince wanted him to remove the restrictions and set up new ones. This was exactly what he wanted, because the Lung Shiqi still had a heavenly Thunderblaze pearl. As long as he knew how to remove the restrictions, the Lung Shiqi would have another treasure. Then the shoddy prince picked up a palm-sized disc. This is a sound transmission disc. Remember, don't use it unless the Thunderblaze dynasty is about to be destroyed. The soul clone stared at the disc. This thing was related to the survival of the Thunderblaze dynasty. Haoyan, on the surface, we only have one mystic comprehending expert, Old Master Qiao. However, that is not the case. Hearing this, the soul clone was shocked. The Thunderblaze dynasty actually had more than one mystic comprehending expert. However, he was puzzled. If that was the case, why didn't they invite the other mystic comprehending experts over a month ago? If that was the case, 6 Directions Spiritual Sovereign and the others would not be a threat. They would not have nearly forced the Thunderblaze dynasty into a desperate situation. Actually, the Thunderblaze dynasty has 2 more mystic comprehending experts hidden in the dark. The shoddy prince said proudly. However, he then sighed softly. However, these 2 cannot appear as they wish. Why is that? Because they are both in the heavenly tomb. The shoddy prince said in a deep voice, You have been to the heavenly tomb before. That is where the heavenly origin realm experts of the Thunderblaze dynasty were killed. In fact, there are not only heavenly origin realm experts, there are also 2 mystic comprehending experts. The spiritual avatar immediately recalled that he had vaguely seen 2 mysterious figures at the end of the heavenly tomb. Could they be the wills left behind by the Tongxian stage experts? The humble prince continued. The power of the metaphysical realm is beyond your imagination. Even though they are dead, their minds are still alive. However, they couldn't leave the heavenly tomb easily. Otherwise, their souls would be completely destroyed and the heavenly tomb would cease to exist. Furthermore, the 2 of them can't fight for long in their consciousnesses. So we can only ask for their help when the Thunderflame dynasty is on the brink of death. It turned out that the Thunderflame dynasty still had such a terrifying trump card. As expected, they were not a colossus like the 3 great dynasties. Their foundation was simply too terrifying. The humble prince didn't stop. He put down the round plate and picked up a golden lock. This is the dragon-resisting lock specially prepared for you. With it protecting you, no one can kill you except for metaphysical realm warriors. Previously, I gave one to Lei Haoge as well. Unfortunately, no one would have thought that a Tongxian realm cultivator would really try to kill him. So I asked Old Master Qiao to stay in the palace. Try not to leave the palace unless it's an emergency. Originally, the dragon-resisting lock was enough to keep the emperor safe. However, Lei Haoge's death destroyed this guarantee. Therefore, the humble prince had to ask Old Master Qiao to protect Lei Haoyan secretly. However, Old Master Qiao was a Tongxian realm cultivator after all. He wouldn't come here to protect Lei Haoyan. Therefore, Lei Haoyan had to stay in the palace for a long time. Although Lei Haoyan wouldn't have much freedom, it was still better than being assassinated. In the end, the humble prince took out 2 jade slips. One of them recorded the way to activate the Thunderflame heaven-destroying formation. The other one recorded all the contents of the 9th level cultivation method, the Thunderflame Ardent Yang technique. It also recorded the experiences of generations of royal experts who practiced this cultivation method. You are very talented in cultivation and have a chance to reach the Sky Origin realm. Don't be blinded by power. You have to work harder in the future. Thank you for your reminder, Royal Uncle. The humble prince was satisfied that Lei Haoyan didn't show any arrogance even though he was about to ascend to the throne. That's all I have to say. As your royal uncle, I have a gift for you. Speaking of this, the humble prince took out a list. On this list are the young talents I specially selected for you. Every one of them is very useful. Some of them may be inexperienced, but as long as you are willing to train them well, they will definitely be a great help to you in the future. The soul doppelganger opened the list. The first name on the list was Lu Xingji. He wasn't familiar with most of the names on the list. However, the winners of the elite club such as Delta Origi, Di Chuan, Zhuge and Wu Diao were all on the list. The soul doppelganger wanted to test him. He asked, "Royal Uncle, this Lu Xingji is ranked first. I don't have much contact with him, but I can tell that he is an ambitious man. Can we really put someone like him in an important position?" The humble prince pointed at the list and said, "Haoyan, people like Lu Xingji who are easily seen through by others are not that scary. The scary ones are those who look like they have no desires, but are actually ambitious. You can use Lu Xingji as you wish. If he wants power, you can give him power. If he wants resources, you can give him resources. The only thing you can do is to never let him get involved in the royal family. His talent can only be described as monstrous. In the future, he will probably reach the Sky Origin stage and become a great minister. As for him, you don't have to restrict his power. When you feel that you can't control him anymore, you can give him a piece of land. You can even make him a king, as long as you can keep him away from the royal capital, which is the center of power." Hearing this, the soul doppelganger sneered in his mind. It turned out that the humble prince thought so highly of him. The humble prince had already prepared a way to control him. However, now that he knew about this, he could make use of this information to do something. Now that everything is clear, you can go back now. Prepare for the ascension ceremony the day after tomorrow. The humble prince waved his hand. The soul doppelganger bowed and returned to the crown prince's palace. The ascension ceremony was not a small matter. As the crown prince, he had to prepare a lot of things and ceremonies. Soon it was the 3rd day. It was a day that would be recorded in the history books of the Thunderflame dynasty. The ascension of the new emperor. The royal palace was especially grand and solemn that day. Aside from the royal capital, there were also high platforms set up in all the states. All the high-ranking officials gathered there to pay their respects to the emperor. Lung Shiqi, as one of the 4 chief managers of the Dark Thunder Guards, naturally came to the royal palace to participate in his own ascension ceremony. The auspicious time had arrived. Lung Shiqi's soul doppelganger walked to the main hall step by step in the majestic music. Finally, he turned around and sat on the dragon throne. At this moment, he announced to the world that the new emperor of the Thunderflame dynasty was born. Long live His Majesty! That you're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.